Welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Chapter 61. Master Bai, have you ever seen the tide strike fist? Xicheng District, Market. The nearby buildings with wide views were already crowded with people. Although there were yamen runners patrolling all the time, the atmosphere was still depressing. The child leaned against the window and looked through the gap curiously. He saw a monster crawling at the end of the street and was immediately frightened and trembled. The four markets used to house the people are always coveted by monsters. The fish monsters could not bear the temptation of blood food, so the government only needed to guard the entrances and exits to easily deal with the swarming monsters. Mother, I'm afraid. The woman quickly covered the child's mouth, fearing that it would make too much noise. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. We have the Jinwu guards from the imperial court here. As long as we survive this night, everything will be fine. Similar scenes keep happening. Compared to the periphery where the common people stay, the open space in the center of the market is reserved for martial artists. Their faces were solemn, and their every move was monitored by yamen runners. Even if they were high-ranking gang members, their situation was no different from that of prisoners. Master Wen, a Jinwu guard came over. She looked like an ordinary middle-aged woman, but her skin was translucent and gelatinous, and her skeleton was faintly visible. Captain Hong hurried forward. Master Wen, the situation is stable for now. Should we not send any more warriors? Wen Miao glanced at him coldly and selected 5 warriors from the crowd. The alley to the west needs bait to attract the fish monster. The warrior frowned, but did not dare to disobey the order of the Jinwu guard. The consequence of offending the Jinwu guards is certain death, but being used as bait at least gives you a chance of survival, and the monsters that are currently attacking are still relatively inexperienced. I'll go as well. Bai Haibo stood out from the crowd and went to the location designated by the yamen runner. The other warriors could hardly hide their surprise. After all, once they arrived at the outskirts of the market, life and death would be unpredictable. A trace of greed flashed in Wen Miao's eyes. She quietly released a beetle from her mouth, which landed silently on the warriors. None of the hundreds of practitioners present noticed anything unusual. Bai Haibo walked with his head down with a worried look on his face, deliberately avoiding the eyes of the yamen runners. Ever since the fish disaster broke out, most of the population of Xicheng district has gathered at the market, but there is no sign of Shen Lian and others. Jin Bao has been settled, so I think he's fine. Let's go to the pawn shop before the fish disaster gets worse. I hope my disciple is okay. At this time, a tall figure appeared beside Bai Haibo. Master Bai, you and I are on the same path, right? Bai Haibo was startled, and saw Sun Dewei at the slaughterhouse on the outskirts of the city. Sun Dewei smiled and said, it's too depressing to continue staying in the market. It's better to go back to your home in the suburbs and wait for death. At least it will be quick and painful. All right. Bai Haibo did not refuse. He had a friendship with Sun Dewei, who used to be a strongman in the Jinwu Guard. There were only a few people in the imperial court who could survive until their blood and qi were exhausted and escape unscathed as bait. The two of them walked carefully along the alley, one in front and one behind. Sun Dewei is very experienced in dealing with monsters. He can usually notice the fish monsters in advance, so he can avoid danger on the way. But he was still suffering from hidden injuries and his energy was obviously much less. Bai Haibo could clearly feel that their speed was slowing down. At the same time, there seemed to be rustling noises coming from the darkness. Damn you, you beast. A fish demon has already noticed you and me. How to do? Sun Dewei cursed inwardly, but he did not panic. Master Bai, we will turn around immediately after arriving at the pawn shop. The slaughterhouse is guarded by spiritual talismans, and the monsters dare not approach. Kindness. There was a strong force surrounding Bai Haibo's palms, and his tide strike fist technique was already accumulating secretly. The two began to speed up their pace and could clearly notice that the monster was becoming impatient and couldn't wait to taste the delicious blood. Oh shit. Sun Dewei raised his right foot, and an arm suddenly emerged from the puddle in the corner. Although he managed to dodge, the monster's siege began, and there were more pairs of greedy eyes in the depths of the alley. Go. The two men jumped up, and the fish monster could no longer hold back. A fish monster opened its mouth and bit Bai Haibo, but the latter used all his strength to barely block it. Sun Dewei was attacked on the back, and the claws of a fish monster sank into his flesh, but with the force applied, the wound did not continue to expand. I have practiced horizontal training for many years before I was able to survive the cave filled with mountains of corpses and seas of blood. The two took the opportunity to break away from the encirclement and arrived at Hefeng Street after twists and turns, but their physical strength was gradually exhausted. Kindness. Hefeng Street was deserted, and all the shops had their doors and windows closed. Only the Shen family shop was brightly lit, with smoke rising from the kitchen. Your disciple? I'm not sure, maybe they were in a hurry before evacuating. They inevitably sustained several wounds while they were in a daze, and demonic energy had already invaded their bodies. The fish monsters hunted in groups. Even if there was blood dripping on the ground, they would greedily lick it up, treating the two as trapped turtles in a jar. Master Bai, if Shen Lian is still alive, let's fight the enemy together in the pawn shop first. Row. They bought themselves a chance to catch their breath at the cost of their injuries and approached the pawn shop with difficulty. Then, an incredible scene came into their eyes. I saw. In front of the pawn shop, Shen Lian was squatting on the steps, holding a large bowl full of food and eating, looking extremely leisurely. Bai Haibo also noticed that there seemed to be a lively conversation inside the store. What the hell? Because it was too absurd, they even thought that it was demonic power that entered their brains and affected their five senses, otherwise it could not be explained at all. The two men stopped and were suddenly in a dilemma. Hiccup. Shen Lian burped and put down his bowl. There are 8 fish monsters with less than 10 years of cultivation. Hee, I haven't even filled my stomach yet, but Master Bai has already sent me takeout. Boom. Shen Lian stepped out with his right foot and disappeared in an instant, his physical strength in his normal state fully displayed. Bai Haibo and the other man's pupils shrank slightly. They couldn't even see Shen Lian's movements clearly, they only felt a surge of force hitting them, making the pain in their bodies seem to disappear. It's not an illusion, my disciple. That kind of strength has surpassed the 4th level of foundation building. No, it has surpassed that of a warrior. Bai Haibo even had the illusion that Shen Lian's power was completely different from Zulong's power, as if it was like an innovation. How terrifying is his martial arts talent? Disciple, be careful, there are too many demons. Bai Haibo came to his senses and realized that even a warrior would find it difficult to fight against a group of demons. He secretly regretted coming to the pawnshop and dragging Shen Lian down. Whale fall. Shen Lian walked through the two people, and the smoke and dust emanating from his body formed ripples of waves. A coon whale was looming, and the street became turbulent. The true meaning of martial arts. His fighting style has reached the level of perfection. Sun Dewey couldn't help but sigh. Whoosh. All the fish monsters remained motionless, still feeling the spring breeze blowing on their faces. In the blink of an eye, Shen Lian was behind the fish monster. He shook off the blood on his palm and then restrained his yin and yang energy, which was as real as substance. Bang bang bang. The fish monsters' heads exploded at the same time, minced meat splattered everywhere, and their headless corpses fell to the ground facing Shen Lian, their limbs twitching. When a whale falls, all things are born. Chapter 62. I'm just a warrior. Is it the 5 and 8 realms? Sun Dewey reacted. He didn't expect that Shen Lian not only stepped into the realm of warriors, but even reached a realm that ordinary warriors dared not touch. You know, innate warriors are the top quality blood food that demons flock to. As far as he could remember, apart from a few strong men in the Jinwu Guard who chose to practice the 5 and 8 realms, the rest of the warriors were suppressing their qi and blood in order to protect themselves. But, even if you are at the 5th level of the innate realm, it's hard to have such strength, right? Sun Dewey feels that Shen Lian is already comparable to the newly qualified Jinwu Guards. If he does not die at the hands of demons in the future, his potential will be immeasurable. Bai Haibo was still immersed in the artistic conception of the perfect tide strike fist. Shen Lian stared into the deep and boundless darkness and said coldly, "It's windy outside. Master Bai, senior son, please move to the shop. Let's have some red oil hot pot together to fill our stomachs." Bai Haibo opened his mouth slightly. He wanted to ask about Shen Lian's progress in martial arts, but then he realized that Shen Lian's current realm was not something he could understand. Apart from his extraordinary talent, I can't think of any other reason. What? Shen Lian patted the two men's shoulders, and 2 pale white beetles appeared in his hands. The beetles were originally attached to the back of their necks. When the yin and yang energy rushed towards the beetle, it took 50% of the strength to crush it into pieces. Sun Dewey's face changed drastically. He had obviously seen similar methods before. He couldn't help but said in a deep voice, "Corp's secret technique. How can the Jinwu Guard's secret technique be used on us? You can ask her in person. She should be here soon." Shen Lian's words had just fallen. Bai Haibo and his companion suddenly heard a dense buzzing sound, and countless beetles from all directions gathered in front of the pawn shop. The beetles pieced together to form a skeleton, with flesh and blood growing in the gaps. A moment later, a middle-aged woman appeared in front of them. Shen Lian stared at the Jinwu guards. Corpse Transformation Sutra. He had read the Corpse Transformation Sutra several times and was certain that the visitor had mastered this internal skill. He also understood the other party's purpose in controlling the beetle. Refining the corpse. That's right, the other party should be planning to take advantage of the fish disaster case to kill the warriors in Xicheng district, and then practice the secret art of corpse through the corpses. She can just blame the deaths and injuries on the demons afterwards. Anyway, she doesn't need to stay in Yanliang town permanently. According to the Corpse Transformation Sutra, if a woman learns the Corpse Transformation Sutra, she will have an additional method of moving corpses, as expected. The white bone demon was transformed from a female corpse, so the demon's physique is more suitable for women. Sun Dewei also realized Wen Miao's purpose, and said with a fist, "Sir Wen, I have served as a strongman under Captain Liu. Can you please let the three of us go for Captain Liu's sake?" Lord Liu Wen. Sun Dewei breathed a sigh of relief and quickly replied, "Yes. You two go." Wen Miao looked at Shen Lian with eager eyes, "But he must cooperate with me to deal with the fish disaster case. You can't bear the responsibility." Bai Haibo said in a deep voice, "Master Wen, why don't you let me take over? After all, Shen Lian has not yet started a family, so he has to continue the family line." Wen Miao said no more, his expression hinting at murderous intent. "Then why don't we just stay together?" She didn't think Sun Dewei really had a relationship with Lu Wenho. Besides, even if the three of them died in Yanliang town, what would happen? Who could know? Having a high-quality corpse as supplies might help him gain a foothold in the Jinwu Guard. Sun Dewei activated his horizontal training, and his muscles bulged slightly. Bai Haibo was breathing rapidly. He knew that facing the Jinwu Guards was like hitting a rock with an egg, but he still couldn't help thinking about how to break the impasse. With Shen Lian's talent in martial arts, he shouldn't have died in such an unclear way. They didn't notice at all that there was a starling on the top of the eaves holding a bag of peanuts, and it was covering the pawn shop with black air to avoid any accidental injury. Rumble. There was a loud noise coming from the city. The strong demonic aura could be clearly sensed even from more than a dozen streets away. It was obvious that the fish demon with great skills had taken the bait. Wen Miao glanced in the direction of the market and saw a 100-year-old fish monster that seemed to be nearby. "I don't have time to waste on you. At least 300-year-old demons have come to the city. You either die or cooperate. We will naturally cooperate with you, sir." Sun Dewei gave Bai Haibo a look, and since he had lived enough, he was going to risk his life to give Shen Lian a chance of survival. Shen Lian said to himself, "I am also very envious of the 100-year-old fish monster. How about I give Lord Jinwu a suggestion and pretend that nothing happened?" He picked up the corpses of fish monsters one by one and threw them into the backyard without paying attention to others. Because of his practice, the corpses fell accurately into the tree hole. Wen Miao was stunned and thought that Shen Lian had gone crazy. She opened her mouth and spit out the beetle, intending to destroy Shen Lian's brain first. "Master Bai, please leave me a few hot bites of hot pot." "Disciple, you." Shen Lian walked slowly towards Wen Miao, and then his body swelled at a speed visible to the naked eye. Bone spurs emerged from his joints, scales covered his upper body, and his vertical pupils revealed a terrifying ferocity. When his energy and blood were completely dissipated, Bai Haibo and the other man couldn't help but close their eyes. The blood is like a rainbow. Shen Lian is the Black Coffin Man. Bai Haibo covered his head at a loss. Shen Lian's transformation into a 3-meter giant was simply subversive. He turned to look at Sun Dewei, only to see the latter collapse to the ground, tears streaming down his face. Horizontal training, definitely horizontal training. Only the ultimate horizontal training can do this. He has reached the incredible realm of horizontal training. There is such an astonishing horizontal training talent in the world. Why should I fear death? After today, I have no regrets. Sun Dewei felt as if he could die at night after hearing the truth in the morning. His eyes were full of enthusiasm for Shen Lian. Martial arts should never be lost. Boom. Shen Lian turned into an afterimage and rushed straight towards Wen Miao. Spider web-like cracks were spreading on the spot, and the rain within 100 meters actually evaporated into smoke and dust. I'm sorry to make you laugh, Lord Jinwei. These are just the methods of a warrior. The fist was raised, and unparalleled force was released. What kind of demon are you? Demon. I am a pure warrior. Wen Miao felt as if he was being crushed by a mountain. His bones made crackling sounds as if they could not bear the weight. He had no power to fight back and flew backwards. His internal organs were displaced and blood was gushing out of his mouth and nose. Aren't you a Jinwu guard? You can decide the life and death of warriors at will, right? Do you believe that I can make your life worse than death? Shen Lian punched hard, and Wen Miao fell to the ground like a meteor. You dare. Quote. Boom. Shen Lian broke through the wall with a grim smile and stepped heavily on Wen Miao's head with his right foot, causing the latter's body to sink half a meter into the ground. You like to refine corpses, right? Shen Lian's fists fell like raindrops, and even his internal strength could not stop them. Disperse. Wen Miao definitely felt the threat of death, and the remaining internal force acted on himself, and immediately his flesh, blood, and bones turned into a swarm of beetles. Big monument. Palm. Shen Lian slapped out with his palm, and the yin-yang force formed a palm print more than 10 meters long that covered the insect swarm. A Jinwu guard at the 5th level of Shantian. Can't you handle the 50% state? The beetles fell down with a crackling sound, but many of them still escaped. While Shen Lian was giving chase, he was also keeping an eye on several big fish in the city. Those were the goal of this trip and the basis for the Corpse Taoist's promotion. Chapter 63. Have you ever seen a 40-meter-long tail? The beetles scattered in all directions. Shen Lian's face was gloomy, and the saliva he spat pierced through a few more beetles, but there were still a few beetles disappearing in the street corners and alleys. He looked around. The fish disaster case had already reached the most critical moment, so the noise he made did not attract attention. Damn it, it's worthy of the demonic inner strength associated with the white bone demon. It's really hard to kill it. Luckily, 2 of the meridians in my eyes have been opened up. With my current vision, I should be able to track the beetle. Otherwise, I would have been. Quote. Dong dong dong. Inside an abandoned well in Xicheng district. A giant fish monster about 5 or 6 meters in length emerged, and its demonic aura was extremely obvious, as if it were real. Then the monster quickly walked towards the market. The giant fish monster has been practicing for nearly 200 years. Wherever it passes, water flows out from the cracks in the blue bricks, as if it is flooding a golden mountain. Its human features are quite obvious, but its greasy and smooth skin and strangely bulging pupils make it look even more terrifying. Roar. The 100-year-old fish monster let out a roar, and the fish monsters hiding in the dark rushed towards the market one after another. Shen Lian frowned. With the cover of the 100-year-old fish monster, the beetle was completely hidden in the dark. Seeing this, he simply put his index finger to his mouth and whistled. What do you want to call Master Ba? The starling spread its wings and flew over, still carrying half a bag of peanuts in its claws. Master Ba, that Jinwu guard was severely injured and turned into a poisonous insect. Help me find it. As for the next fish fruit, well, I'll give you 3. 8th Master takes action, 1 is worth 2. The starling seemed to have been paying attention to the beetle's movements and chased after it, flapping its wings. Shen Lian was not worried about the safety of the starling. Wen Miao's method of escaping from the shell had almost dissipated all of his internal energy, so he could deal with even an ordinary bird. Forget it, I can only let her die quickly. Shen Lian used his legs to push closer to the market. Little did he know that his own attack was the only way to give Wen Miao a quick death. The way the starling treated its prey, haha, was simply worse than death. At the same time, the Yamen runners were looking at the streets of Xicheng district with dull eyes. They felt a deep sense of powerlessness. Even a monster with 10 years of cultivation would require the coordinated efforts of 7 or 8 warriors to kill. But now, there are more demons than people, so the Yamen runners must despair. Moreover, at the critical moment, the Jinwu guards on duty disappeared, and there was a high probability that they became food for the demons in the first moment. What are you standing there for? Kill. Captain Hong's eyes turned red and he rushed towards the century-old fish monster with a knife in hand. Due to the fear in his heart, his hands holding the sword trembled constantly, but there was no way, he knew he had to advance and there was no retreat. The only way to survive is to hold out until support comes from the Jinwu guards. Otherwise, thousands of people will be exposed to the monster. There were 20 or 30 Yamen runners following Captain Hong in the charge, but they were like a mantis trying to stop a chariot, and they didn't even attract the attention of the 100-year-old fish monster. Hold them back, Master Wen Miao will be back soon. Captain Hong came within half a meter of the century-old fish monster and slashed it with all his strength. Then, the broken blade grazed his scalp. The 100-year-old fish demon scratched its arm as if it had been bitten by a mosquito. There was a hint of amusement in his wide-open eyes. No, no, no. Captain Hong fell to his knees. The fear that had been accumulating in his heart burst out. His limbs kept shaking and he no longer had any courage. The other Yamen runners stopped and fled backwards in shame. Many fish monsters were drooling, but since the 100-year-old fish monster leading them hadn't spoken, they didn't dare to go beyond the limits and divide up the thousands of pieces of blood food. The 100-year-old fish monster calmly grabbed Captain Hong, opened his mouth half a meter wide, and his neck swelled 4 or 5 times, intending to swallow the latter in one gulp. Don't eat me, no, no, no. Boom. The huge creature fell heavily to the ground, and the dark gold pupils exchanged glances with Captain Hong. Brother Yu, can't you wait a little longer? The previous trouble hasn't been solved yet, and you can't wait to jump out. Are you looking for death? Shen Lian transformed into a bronze body, and his voice became unusually hoarse. The expression of the 100-year-old fish demon changed from anger to greed. After all, the quality of Shen Lian's qi and blood is comparable to hundreds of blood foods. Let us whet your appetite first. The 100-year-old fish monster simply ignored Shen Lian and continued to close its mouth. Just when its sharp teeth were about to touch Captain Hong. Boom! Shen Lian grasped the upper and lower jaws of the century-old fish monster with both hands. As a demon, you are too weak and powerless. If you want to eat people, go home and practice for a few more years. Shen Lian's heartbeat quickened and the muscles in his arms swelled suddenly. Before the 100-year-old fish monster could react, he pulled with force. Roar! The jaw of the century-old fish monster was torn open, and its tongue was abruptly exposed. Shen Lian kicked with his right foot, and with a crisp sound, the right arm of the 100-year-old fish monster broke, and Captain Hong fell to the corner in a mess. Shen Lian seemed slightly dissatisfied. I can't even kill a 100-year-old monster instantly. It seems that my martial arts skills are still not enough. I need to continue to improve them. The century-old fish demon felt threatened and disappeared in the puddles that spread across the street. The fish monsters rushed towards Shen Lian one after another. Captain Hong stared at Shen Lian in disbelief. Could it be that the man in the black coffin was really a warrior? Otherwise, why would he have such strong power? There are too many demons. We can cooperate with you. Before he finished speaking, he heard Shen Lian's indifferent response, bend down. What? I'll make you bend over. Shen Lian had a grim smile on his face, the breath leaking out became more and more intense, his heart rate had reached its limit, and the blood vessels in his body were completely exposed on the surface. Captain Hong and other Yamen runners subconsciously lay down in the puddle. Whoosh! They only felt a flash of sound of breaking air above their heads. When the Yamen runners saw the situation clearly, they could not help but overturn the idea that the man in the black coffin was a warrior. Shen Lian clasped his hands over his chest, and a continuous bloody rain covered the street. What about those fish monsters? The corpse was hanging in the air, pierced by a long metallic bone whip. Because its stomach was cut open, it was bleeding profusely. What surprised Captain Hong was that the long bone whip extended from the back of the man in the black coffin. That's right, the so-called long bone whip is actually the spine of the man in the black coffin, but the spine is at least hundreds of meters long. The monsters turned into candied haws, still swung by their white skeletal spines. After Shen Lian's horizontal training was integrated into the tiger bone iron spine technique, the improvement in physical strength was secondary, and the white bone spine was an unexpected surprise. However, the horizontal training to temper the bones is obviously not enough, and the spine cannot be used as a conventional weapon. Yes, the harvest is great. If I kill a few more 100-year-old fish monsters, it should be enough for the corpse Taoist to advance. We can't waste the opportunity we have obtained. Shen Lian glanced at the street and saw that the 100-year-old fish monster had already begun to retreat. I don't have time to waste time with you. Can't you hide in the water? Well, I will cut off the water source you rely on for survival first. Shen Lian called out his career panel, and it just so happened that one of the new stances he had mastered had been perfected. Question mark. Blue blood clearing heart pillar perfection. The Hunyuan Yiti posture was not successfully advanced during the retreat, but it has already reached the bottleneck of great success and may break through at any time. Do you want to consume 3 points to combine the yin-yang tai chi pile and the green blood heart pile? Determine. The two forces are integrated. Shen Lian's body temperature was rising, and his strength was overflowing. Chapter 64, The Man with the Black Coffin. No, Zhang Kui. Just standing at the entrance of the street, Shen Lian's aura was creepy enough. Countless eyes were cast around the market, and the people looked at the huge creature in silence. It was obviously Shen Lian who took action to wipe out all the fish monsters, but they still couldn't hide the fear in their hearts. After all, the bronze body with exposed spine was too horrifying. Mother, who is he? Don't be afraid, he is Master Zhang Kui who slays demons and monsters. If he didn't look scary, Master Zhang Kui wouldn't be able to scare the monsters away. Master Zhang Kui. Shen Lian grinned when he heard the child's tender cry. The young man is very perceptive, and sounds much better than the black coffin man. He opened his mouth and a constant stream of yin and yang energy surged out. After it touched the accumulated water, the energy burned uncontrollably. The bailiff showed fear on his face, but then he realized that the flames did not hurt him. Captain Hong couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Strength, it's strength, how can there be such a level of strength, is there any future for martial arts?" The other warriors also looked at the street from afar, looking fascinated. Even if they knew that Shen Lian was not necessarily a warrior, so what? The scene of the power turning into a sea and burning the demons could only be seen in dreams. Hey. Shen Lian threw the remaining medicine in the fruit core into his mouth. The huge amount of nutrients supported the transformation of his strength, and the sea of fire became more and more intense. Extremely thick mist spread everywhere, and visibility became lower and lower. Shen Lian glanced at himself. As the synthesis of the pile method deepened, the specificity continued to intensify. The scales became tougher and had begun to cover the waist and abdomen. Shen Lian finally understood that the transformation of the pile method inevitably involves the specificity. But it's okay. At least the peculiarity can be controlled freely. Evil beast, come here. Shen Lian narrowed his eyes. As the accumulated water gradually dried up, the beasts in the dark finally lost their patience and planned to retreat to the bottom of the well for the time being. It's a dying struggle, but monsters are indeed more resilient than ghosts. After repairs, the 100-year-old fish demon has recovered most of its injuries, but the loss of its spiritual power has caused a decrease in its human part. It crawled desperately towards the well. Boom. Shen Lian appeared beside the 100-year-old fish monster, grabbed the latter's head and smashed it hard. The abandoned building collapsed and a pit several meters deep appeared in its place. The 100-year-old fish demon roared unwillingly. Fists fell like a storm, breaking every bone with precision. Shen Lian waved his hands and mist suddenly surged out, covering half of the West City district. The people's faces turned pale with nervousness. When the mist disappeared, Shen Lian had disappeared. Nanchang District. The granary was extremely closed and the smell of blood was lingering in the air. More than a dozen warriors hid in the corner. They had wounds all over their bodies, and for some unknown reason, the wounds were bleeding continuously. Even if I tied it with a cloth tape, it wouldn't stop the bleeding. A famous Jinwu guard stood aside, holding a breath-suppressing talisman in his hand, waiting with a calm look on his face, licking his lips with a tongue shaped like a scorpion's tail. There were heavy footsteps outside the granary, and a 100-year-old fish monster came over following the smell. Seeing this, the warriors held their breath, their eyes filled with despair. The door was pushed open. A 100-year-old fish demon stood in front of the door, causing the warriors to wail hysterically. "Sir, save me, sir." Grown-ups. The Jinwu guard had no intention of attacking. His internal strength caused poison to drip from his fingertips, quietly mixing into the pool of blood flowing from the warrior. His eyes were full of indifference. Once the monster swallows the meat bait, I can kill it without any damage. Isn't it much easier than Li Shun and the others working together to kill the monster? The 100-year-old fish demon couldn't hold back his desire and rushed towards the warriors impatiently. Sudden. Bang. A large hole suddenly appeared on the top of the granary. Moonlight poured into the room, and shadows shone on the wall, resembling the face of a grinning ghost. The 100-year-old fish demon stopped, leaned down cautiously and retreated amid the surging demonic energy. The Jinwu guard looked puzzled and subconsciously looked outside the cave. Could it be that someone is jealous and covets my ability to fight against the 100-year-old demon alone? Haha, if you offend me, you may die without knowing how. Before the Jinwu guard could finish his words, a sound of breaking air was heard. The bony spine enlarged before my eyes. Well. The Jinwu guard was unable to react in time and his head was smashed by the white bone spine. The moment the corpse fell to its knees, Shen Lian broke through the granary and crashed heavily into the century-old fish monster, causing the latter to suffer broken bones and tendons. As the warriors stared in astonishment, Shen Lian grabbed the century-old fish monster's head and hammered it hard. Boom, boom, boom. The demon, who was once so arrogant, had no power to fight back in front of Shen Lian, and half of his body was knocked into the ground. The warriors dared not stay for long. After the death of Jinwei, the poison in their bodies disappeared, so they rushed away from the granary. They had only run a few hundred meters when the noise in the granary suddenly stopped. Looking back, but then he saw a figure over 3 meters tall dragging the corpse of a 100-year-old fish monster. The warriors would rather face the monsters than have close contact with Shen Lian. The oppressive feeling brought by the latter is so deep that it penetrates into their bones. Shen Lian left the granary and skillfully hid the fish monster's body in the dark. Boom! He jumped with all his strength and walked across the rooftop as if it were flat ground, rushing to the East City district, where a century-old fish monster was seriously injured. Compared with Wen Miao and others who took shortcuts, Li Shun and the other two cooperated to encircle and suppress the fish monster. They had a very good understanding of each other. After suppressing the 100-year-old fish demon, they used demon exorcising talismans to gradually devour the latter's evil spirit. Gradually gaining the upper hand, Li Shun was stunned, staring into the distance with his mouth wide open. Li Shun, use the golden light to scare the monster away, don't let it escape into the water. Li Sun, a Jinwu guard shouted a few times, and then he looked in the direction Li Shun was looking, only to see a figure coming towards him like a meteor. Shen Lian descended from the sky and used the impact force to strike out with a palm. Rumble. The body of the 100-year-old fish monster was suddenly twisted into a knot, and the protruding bone spurs pierced through the flesh, and the splattered flesh covered the Jinwu guards. They didn't move, allowing Shen Lian to take the body away. Shen Lian originally planned to continue to grab heads, but as soon as he walked out of the East City district, he noticed a vague gaze watching him. That's enough. It won't be a problem for the corpse Taoist to get promoted. He disappeared into the alley, his heart rate dropping to almost a stop. After Shen Lian went to a remote suburb, the prying eyes completely disappeared. The remaining fish monsters in the city were causing trouble, and the Jinwu guards had no time to take care of them. He dealt with the fish monster's corpse with satisfaction. In order to prevent the blood dripping from the corpses from revealing his whereabouts, he would quietly pile them together in one place and force fruit cores into them for transportation back and forth. When Shen Lian returned to the pawn shop, the red oil hot pot had been boiling for a long time and the aroma was bursting out. Sit, sit, sit. Sun Dewei pushed the chair away and handed over tea attentively. Bai Haibo and others had complicated expressions, as if they wanted to say something but hesitated. They wanted to ask something, but realized that maybe this was just a talent. The word, talent, alone is enough to explain everything. Shen Lian ate his meal while keeping an eye on his career panel. After the banyan tree devoured a large number of fish monster corpses, the prompts kept appearing. Absorb large bluefish, corpse Taoist experience plus 3.7%. Absorb large bluefish, corpse Taoist experience plus 2.3%. Corpse Taoist reaches 40.12%, martial arts points plus 1. Rongshu has a bit of indigestion. It will probably take half an hour for the corpse Taoist to complete the promotion. By the way, where's the starling? Chapter 65. Mina takes action and sends the whole family away. Inside the government residence, the tiger's head was hanging in the air, and Zhuo Yan's face was extremely gloomy. Zhu Yihong, who had just recovered from a serious injury, stood respectfully by the side. Zhuo Yan naturally saw the actions of the Black Coffin Man in the city, but he was more concerned about the 9-eared demon hiding in the dark. Ever since the fish disaster broke out, the aura of the 9-eared demon has been revealed from time to time. Zhuo Yan was sure that the 9-eared demon had been practicing for at least 2,000 years, while the other two demons had not shown any signs of showing up. While he was thinking, the trace of the man in the black coffin had disappeared. Let's not discuss the nine-eared demon for now. Zhuo Yan said calmly. The Black Coffin Man should find out the truth as soon as possible. At this time, the fish disaster case has gradually calmed down, and the Jinwu guards are already in the final stages of their work. They should be able to deal with the remaining fish monsters before daybreak. Zhu Yihong asked with lingering fear, Master Zhuo, is the man in the black coffin a Taoist priest? You've had close contact with the Black Coffin Man. Do you think he is? No. It's hard to say. I don't know much about alchemists, but the man in the black coffin is definitely not a warrior. How can a warrior kill a demon? The scene of Shen Lian fighting against dozens of ghosts flashed through Zhu Yihong's mind. The act of swallowing up resentment is simply not something that an ordinary warrior can do, not to mention that the giant incarnated by the Black Coffin Man is simply subversive. Really? Zhuo Yan smiled and said, although my real body is not in Yanliang town, the Black Coffin Man is most likely an alchemist in the wild. You have to know that each of those alchemists is mysterious and unpredictable. In the Jinwu Guard, alchemists are not something that ordinary soldiers can come into contact with. It is said that most of the talismans and magical instruments issued by the court are made by alchemists. Zhu Yihong, after the fish disaster is over, you will select 2 people from the 10 surviving households to stay in Yanliang town. By then, Wang Xin will have almost returned, so you should pay more attention. Zhu Yihong was shocked and asked, Master Zhuo, is there another disaster in the city? There has been some progress at Gao village. After a few pauses of hesitation, Zhuo Yanyan explained in detail, the Jinwu guards intend to seize a shop on Yongqi Street in Gao Laozhuang as a foothold. Currently, the 6th shop is tentatively selected as the tailor shop. If something strange happened in Yanliang town related to tailors, it is very likely that we will be affected. Zhu Yihong took a breath of cold air. Gao Laozhuang is more than 100 miles away from Yanliang town, but the imperial court actually had to make arrangements in advance, which shows how dangerous the pig demon case is. And many more. Zhuo Yan laughed strangely for no reason. It seems you don't need to pay too much attention to the Black Coffin Man. Zhu Yihong was a little puzzled, but saw a pale white beetle flying in from the window, emitting a faint corpse-like internal force. This is, quote, the corpse worm that Wen Miao transformed into is left with only a remnant of soul and body surviving. Zhuo Yan felt somewhat gloating, not knowing that a starling had also landed in the courtyard, and seemed to have intentionally followed the beetle to the yamen, and was now eating peanuts and looking at it with interest. Was Wen Miao killed by the Black Coffin Man? Well, even if we spend resources to rebuild our body and soul, Wen Miao will find it difficult to break through to the 6th level of Yuan Dan in the future. His foundation is completely destroyed. Zhuo Yan smiled and said, Wen Miao's master is Captain Peng Kashang. That old man had 2 disciples who died in Yanliang town one after another. I didn't expect that Hu Baocheng is also a disciple of Captain Peng. Zhu Yihong had heard of Peng Kashang, who was extremely vicious and cruel. He liked to make corpses, and his disciples all had strange personalities. Zhuo Yan grinned and said, Old Bone will definitely be interested in the Black Coffin Man. Well, he may have already noticed that Wen Miao is dead. Old Bone is temporarily in seclusion at the government office in Gaojia town. It will take a few days for him to get here. The starling tilted its head and then showed a look of wisdom in its eyes. It turned its head and looked at the pawnshop. The banyan tree's cultivation had just reached 1,000 years, and the third brother's magical powers as a demon had increased accordingly. A vine spread over the eaves of the mansion. The starling stared at the vines, as if communicating with the banyan tree. I don't know what the 2 agreed on, but the banyan tree's branches and leaves began to wither, and most of its roots gathered together. No one noticed that all the roots of the banyan tree grew rapidly, extending wildly underground, pointing directly towards Gaojia town. The rhizome is like a long snake, piercing through the rocks wherever it passes. Gaojia town, inside the government office. Peng Kashang narrowed his eyes, revealing a terrifying hatred. His zombie-like body was covered with pus and exuded a foul stench. Wen Miao's body and soul were seriously injured. The death of a disciple doesn't matter, but who will replace the corpse that Wen Miao pays tribute to every month? Damn it. Peng Kashang stood up and walked out of the retreat room. I will extract your soul and refine it into an iron corpse that retains its intelligence. You will be at my service for 100 years, unable to live or die. Kindness. Peng Kashang suppressed his resentment and looked down at the floor. There was a rustling noise. Where did the stink bug come from? Boom! The roots of the banyan tree pierced directly into Peng Keshang's chest, shattering his heart with incredible precision. The latter didn't even have time to use his internal energy. Peng Keshang tried to break free, but the roots took him back into the ground. Boom! A 1,000-year-old demon. How? How could there be a 1,000-year-old demon? Why is it killing me? Why is the 1,000-year-old demon killing me? His dying consciousness discovered that he was getting closer and closer to Wen Miao's remaining breath. Fuck you, Wen Miaoni, you. Peng Keshang's life force was completely cut off, and his corpse became the first fertilizer for the banyan tree after it had been on the path for 1,000 years. Even though it did not increase experience, the branches had already begun to produce fruits. After Peng Keshang's death, the Jinwu guards stationed in Gaojia town immediately noticed something was wrong. After all, the talisman related to life began to dim. Zhuo Yan's smile froze. He stared at the beetle in doubt, with cold sweat on his forehead. Zhu Yihong was unaware of Zhuo Yan's fear and said softly, Master Zhuo, after Captain Peng comes to Yanliang town, should we cooperate with him to find the trace of the black coffin man? No, please don't. The man in the black coffin, no, according to the people, it's Zhang Kui. Zhu Yihong, from now on, when it comes to matters involving Zhang Kui, you should focus on making friends with him. Zhuo Yan exhaled clear air and crushed the remaining corpse worms into powder. Peng Keshang is dead. He shouldn't come to Yanliang town to cause trouble. You should focus on the aftermath of the pig demon case. Zhu Yihong opened his mouth slightly. Master Zhuo, how did Captain Peng die? Don't ask. He died accidentally in Gaojia town. Zhuo Yan's eyes rolled around. He suddenly felt that there were dangers everywhere around him. Ordinary furniture became extremely eerie. Could the 9-eared demon be in the yamen? I'll leave first. There's something urgent going on at Gao village. Master Zhuo. When Zhuo Yan left the yamen in the air, he couldn't help but feel as if he saw enemies everywhere. Even a crow passing by scared him. The starling watched the tiger's head disappear into the clouds and let out a mocking laugh. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 66 Promotion Corpse Seeking Taoist Priest. As the sun rises, people leave the market one after another. Bai Haibo hurried to pick up Bai Jinbao, and Sun Dewei also returned to the slaughterhouse in the suburbs. Shen Lian seemed heartless. After eating and drinking, he stayed in the courtyard. On the surface, he was standing still, but in fact he was looking at the banyan tree. The banyan tree has been successfully promoted. But I don't know if it was an illusion. The banyan tree had clearly swallowed a large number of monster corpses, but it still looked a little listless, and its branches and leaves were even slightly yellowing. Eccentric. Shen Lian didn't know that the banyan tree stretched for hundreds of miles to help him eradicate the weeds, and it actually consumed a lot of nutrients. Maybe it has something to do with the promotion of the corpse Taoist. Shen Lian glanced at the profession panel and found that the second-level profession that was replaced was corpse-seeking Taoist priest. The magical powers are also different. Rebirth concept. Actively absorb nutrients from the ground to create a great medicine. The nutrients in the ground, this information is very subtle. Could it be that in the future, the banyan tree can be self-sufficient in growing elixirs? Shen Lian chose to bind himself to the banyan tree because the latter had the possibility of turning into a demon. Now it seems that hope is indeed growing. Makes sense. If the banyan tree turns into a monster, the title of best employee will not go to the starling. Ah, Master Ba has returned, why doesn't Lian submit to you? The starling landed on the branch of the banyan tree and shook its head triumphantly. Shen Lian understood that the beetle he had warned about had been successfully killed. Ba Yi is mighty. With Master Ba here, our Shen family pawnshop is thriving. Shen Lian noticed that the banyan tree did have a fruit that was shaped like a white skeleton. If nothing unexpected happened, it should have been bred from the corpse of the Jinwu guard. Let me see. There are a total of 45 fish fruit buds. Give 3 to Big Brother. It will be the year-end bonus for the best employee. After eating the fish fruit, you can almost be promoted to a sharp-toothed warrior. Once the sharp-toothed warrior is promoted to the 3rd level, the benefit to Shen Lian's martial arts training will be far beyond imagination, but the fish fruit cannot be wasted in a hurry. Question mark. Shen Lian. Realm. Innate I root. Martial arts. Unknown stance, tide flame, indestructible bronze body form, tide beating fist, perfect, mixed origin stance, great success, large steel palm, great success. Question mark. Points, 41. Level 14.33 occupation, 9 chi earth hatred %. Second level occupation, sharp-toothed warrior, 77.65%. Second level occupation, corpse-seeking Taoist priest, 7.56%. I have already reached 41 points without realizing it. It's a pity that the ghost market may not open next month, otherwise I would have to learn more than a dozen martial arts. Shen Lian pondered secretly, which attracted the contemptuous look of the starling. He was concentrating on circulating the yin-yang energy, and blood vessels were visible around his eye sockets. This was a sign that the energy was constantly tempering the meridians in his eyes. According to the current purity of yin-yang energy, if 2 or 3 more martial arts are integrated into it, it will be able to transform like Henglian. The third meridian has been mostly unblocked, but Shen Lian is still dissatisfied with the efficiency of his practice. After all, the innate 5 realms have just begun. Shen Lian, is it convenient for you to come in? Sun Dewey's voice came from outside the courtyard gate. Shen Lian couldn't help but be stunned. Sun Dewey was panting heavily and was obviously rushing to and from the slaughterhouse, as if he was deliberately getting something. Please in, senior son. Sun Dewey walked into the courtyard and felt his blood boiling when he saw Shen Lian. The bronze body image is still vivid in my mind. It is hard to imagine how many horizontal training techniques were superimposed on each other to create such an astonishing martial art. It is simply incredible. Shen Lian, I worked as a strongman in the Jinwu Guard for more than 10 years. I have a lot of experience and have come into contact with the martial arts secrets in the court. Sun Dewey was in his 40s or 50s. When he took out the package from his arms, he couldn't help but tremble in his right hand and his breathing became rapid. Here are 3 superior horizontal trainings and 1 superior stance training. I will teach them to you today. Thank you, senior son. Shen Lian was overjoyed. He just felt that he was lacking in martial arts, and in the blink of an eye, the secret manual was delivered to his door. Sun Dewey felt relieved. He watched Shen Lian take the package. He didn't know what to say for a moment, and his face turned red as he managed to utter, "Thank you." In his early years, he had thought about trying to practice the 5 innate realms, but he was injured and his enthusiasm was completely exhausted after going back and forth. Before witnessing the bronze body image, Sun Dewey even felt that he had lost his martial arts path. Shen Lian, I have read the classics of the Tang Dynasty. 1,000 years ago, the Jinwu Guards were mainly based on martial arts, and later on, internal skills began to rise. Sun Dewey was like an old man, murmuring about the prosperity of martial arts in the past. Shen Lian's brows furrowed more and more tightly. As the official force against demons, Jinwu Guards cannot promote martial arts even if they don't have internal strength, right? You know, fullness of qi and blood will only attract powerful demons with profound Taoism. Or was there some change in the Tang Dynasty 1,000 years ago? Shen Lian couldn't help but ask, "Senior son, have you seen any records about Golden Cicada in the Jinwu Guard? Jin Chanzi? Or Xuanzang?" "Not really." Sun Dewey murmured, "but there is one thing mentioned in some unofficial history." "What?" According to unofficial history records, it seems that mortals are becoming more and more delicious. I don't understand why they use the word delicious to describe it. Sun Dewey shook his head and explained helplessly, "I am just a powerful warrior, and the books I can see are relatively sparse and ordinary." Fine. Shen Lian's pupils shrank slightly as he realized something that was extremely terrifying upon closer thought. In Journey to the West, although demons also eat humans, it is never mentioned that demons practice spiritual cultivation by eating humans. In this ruined world of Journey to the West, the benefits of demons eating people are far beyond imagination. An ordinary warrior can provide 3 to 4 years of cultivation for the demons, which results in the demons' desire for blood and food prompting them to attack towns. What happened 1,000 years ago that caused the world of Journey to the West to collapse, made mortals become delicious, caused Taoism and Buddhism to disappear, and prevented Tang Monk and his 3 disciples from setting foot on the journey to the West? Shen Lian's mind was full of doubts. After Jin Chanzi disappeared, why does it feel like everyone is Tang Monk's flesh? Shen Lian, be careful next time. The Jinwu Guards are making quite a stir in Gao Laozhuang, and there is a high probability that it will affect our Yanliang town. Senior son, have you ever been to Gao village? No, I only know that Gao Laozhuang is a cave. The Jinwu guards usually call the area where multi-headed monsters reside as a cave. Sun Dewei took a deep breath and said, when I followed the Jinwu guards, the cave I went to was called Eagle's Sorrow Stream, but I was just clearing out some ordinary monsters on the periphery. I heard that there is an extraordinary demonic dragon at the bottom of Yingqiu Gorge, but I don't know if it's true or not. Shen Lian fell into a trance. Yingqiujian is the pool where Guanyin Bodhisattva asked the white dragon horse to wait for Tang Monk. If the white dragon horse still stayed there, wouldn't it mean that Tang Monk did not follow the script when he first left the Tang Dynasty? The two chatted for a long time, but Sun Dewei knew very little. The specific current situation of Yingqiujian might only be known by the Jinwu guards. Chapter 67. Dear readers. Available on Thursday 21st. Dear readers, I Can't Be a Monster will be available on Thursday at 12 noon. Thank you for your support, and I hope you will not be stingy with your first order. After all, I am now living entirely on subscriptions. After it is put on the shelves, the daily volume will be at least 6,000 plus. The leader will add one chapter, and for every additional 1,000 monthly votes, one chapter will be added. Thank you all for your support. I hope that the readers who have the opportunity to read this book will be healthy and have everything go well. Chapter 68. Best Employee Banyan Tree. The golden cicada can't be divided and eaten by mortals, right? Shen Lian shuddered, but then he thought it was unrealistic. In his impression, Tang Monk had died in the quicksand river at least 7 or 8 times. In other words, Jin Chanzi's personal accident may not necessarily affect the layout of Journey to the West. Forget it, let's practice martial arts. My current strength is simply not enough to be in the Journey to the West. Shen Lian then lay down under the banyan tree, earning the starling's contemptuous stare. Nice weather. Shen Lian yawned. He gradually got used to distracting himself to temper his eye meridians. Then he picked up the 4 martial arts secrets books given to him by Sun Dewei. It can be seen that Sun Dewei was indeed a martial arts fanatic when he was young. The pages of the secret book were filled with annotations and even some rudimentary methods of dealing with demons, which might be the reason why Sun Dewei was able to survive. The name of this stance is Nourishing Blood Internal Stance, which is a relatively moderate stance among the superior stances. Its main function is to suppress one's own hidden injuries, while making the qi and blood more restrained. It is similar to the breath-holding method I incorporated earlier. Shen Lian put the fruit core away for the time being. Currently, the Hunyuan Yiti posture had not been completed yet, and it was not easy to practice the blood-nourishing inner posture at the same time, so as not to affect the tempering of the meridians. He found that the horizontal training martial arts chosen by Sun Dewei was very clever. The first door is no leakage merit. Once one has mastered the art of no leakage, the unintentional loss of essence, energy and spirit will be greatly improved, allowing the warrior's peak energy and blood to be delayed by 10 years. The entry method is relatively gentle, and it is enough to temper the upper, middle and lower dantian through strength. The second one is Bull Demon Bone Refining Technique. As the name suggests, the Bull Demon Bone Refining Technique targets the bones. Sun Dewei was unreserved. Originally, to get started he had to take a powerful drug that would corrode his bones, but later he figured out a shortcut that would damage his own strength. It just so happens that the bone spine is still quite different from a metal weapon. The third door is Fashion Solid Qigong. Activating Fashion Solid power can make the flesh and blood like armor, and Sun Dewei emphasized that this horizontal training can temporarily lock the demonic aura that penetrates into the flesh and blood to prevent damage to the internal organs. Senior Sun's talent for horizontal training is truly beyond ordinary. After mastering the 3 horizontal trainings, his hidden injuries are not fatal. In a sense, it also shows the danger of Yingqiujian at that time, which forced people into a desperate situation. I feel that the imperial court is not capable of eradicating the demons in Yingqiujian. It is likely that they will mainly rely on suppression. I am afraid that they will have to send the Jinwu guards to the cave residents every once in a while. No wonder some of the Jinwu guards are mentally ill. Anyone would be driven crazy. The demon's internal strength is very suitable for the current situation of the Tang Dynasty. As long as you can successfully get started, you can quickly train a group of Jinwu guards who are in the 5th level of innateness. Shen Lian started with the Wuluo Gong, dividing his strength into 3 parts that went to the upper, middle and lower dantian. The efficiency of practicing yin-yang energy may not reach expectations, but due to the characteristics of yin-yang transformation, it is truly outstanding when used for tempering. That's it. Shen Lian only felt that the force wrapped around his three dantians without any hindrance, and then he urged the force meticulously, and a stinging pain came. The occupation panel has revealed no leakage power, first glimpse. The innate horizontal training holy body is so terrifying. With Shen Lian's current physical strength, others need to figure it out step by step, but he can just rush in without any hidden injuries. He silently put the bull demon bone refining technique into the rules. Obviously Sun Dewei used his strength to destroy his bone marrow, and only dared to damage 1/10 of his bone marrow every 10 days, but Shen Lian was completely different. Bang bang bang. It seemed as if there were explosives inside Shen Lian's body, and suffocating muffled sounds continued to be heard. Cracks suddenly spread across the surface of his bones. Broken bones. It doesn't matter, I have a congenitally trained holy body. If Sun Dewei saw this, he would understand why Shen Lian was able to resume his martial arts. The next day, the fish fruits on the branches were ripe. While the starling was out looking for food, he decisively ate most of the fish fruits, leaving only 3, plus 2 kilograms of red-skinned peanuts to fool the bird. With sufficient nutrients to support him, Shen Lian became more unscrupulous in his practice of horizontal training. Soon, he began to practice 3 horizontal trainings at the same time. Fascian solid training was to use sharp steel needles to pierce the flesh of the limbs, chest and abdomen. The horizontal training progressed very quickly, and in just 3 days, some small achievements had been made. During this period, Yanliang town returned to peace. However, Shen Lian knew that even if the people tacitly did not mention the monsters on the surface, they could not help but feel fear in their hearts. If there is any more trouble, Yanliang town may very likely fall into civil strife. The fish disaster case is over, but the Bibotan Lake, the source, still exists, and Bibotan Lake should also be a cave. Shen Lian shook his head slightly. The 81 difficulties of the journey to the west were spread all over this world, and only God knew how many caves were scattered everywhere. When he was in a daze, a translucent force began to surge in his dantian. The Hunyuan Yiti posture quietly came to perfection. Just as Shen Lian was about to call up the profession panel for synthesis, a prompt suddenly appeared. Absorb the big bluefish, and gain plus 0.15% experience from the corpse-seeking Taoist priest. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. Shen Lian raised his eyebrows and looked at the banyan tree in the corner. The tree hole was still empty, but the prompt on the career panel was not an illusion. Hiss, what a good way to actively absorb nutrients from the ground. Could it be that the roots of the banyan tree have already touched the underground river, and some of the fish monsters that strayed into the current river section have become fertilizer after their death? Or does the banyan tree have demonic characteristics, similar to the Venus flytrap plant? Shen Lian noticed that a fish fruit bud had emerged from the branch. Facts have proved that the banyan tree can produce a few fish fruits every now and then, and the best employee has nothing to do with starlings from now on. Shen Lian patted the tree trunk with great satisfaction. Whether to consume 3 points to synthesize the unknown pile method and the Hunyuan 1 pile. At the same time as he confirmed it, the yin and yang energy surged, the third eye root meridian was connected, and the energy poured into the fourth meridian without stopping. Shen Lian could personally feel the improvement in his eyesight. And special scales cover the thighs. Once the blood-nourishing internal pillars are integrated, the specificity will become flawless. As to whether the specificity will continue to intensify, it is still an unknown. Underground of Yanliang town. The interconnected caves span thousands of miles, and underground rivers flow endlessly. Schools of blue carp swam hurriedly upstream, as if avoiding danger, until a black shadow over 10 meters long flashed through the water. A strong evil aura spread out. A strange fish with a human face emerged from the water and stared towards the direction of Yanliang town. As Shen Lian expected, the fish disaster case could not be prevented at all, because the greed of demons came from instinct. Eating people. Did they need a reason? Pat pat pat. The strange fish climbed the rock wall and moved quickly, and gravel rolled down. Blood, blood food, eat up all the blood food. The strange fish seemed to have smelled the blood and showed an exaggerated smile. After turning several corners, it came within 10 miles of Yanliang town. The scene that came into view made it stop. I saw countless banyan tree roots filling the underground river, and the roots were still extending, with the corpses of several large fish that were about to become monsters hanging at the end. Roar! The strange fish tried to get closer unwillingly, but the roots became alert like living things. In the eyes of the demons, a new cave has been born in Yanliang town, and all underground rivers in the area will be Shen Lian's restricted area from now on. Chapter 69, Corpse Fruit for Refining. Shen Lian lay in the courtyard for 3 days before he was able to gather his strength. He heard the sound of children playing and fighting in the street. Zhang Kui is the most evil, he commands the people and makes decisions. He is brave and hard-working, and demons are afraid of him. One child reluctantly played the role of a demon, while another child held a straw whip and pretended to be Zhang Kui. What a mess! Shen Lian leaned over to take a look, and saw that the child was holding a strange clay figurine of Zhang Kui, which was inexplicably similar to his own bronze statue. Am I that ugly? It's probably because the clay figurine vendor's craftsmanship is so poor. After the fish disaster, the worship of Zhang Kui in the city became more prosperous, and all the people seemed to be talking about the secular god. The government did not stop it and even condoned the people to make major changes to the appearance of the Zhang Kui statue. Shen Lian curled his lips. He felt that he was only one bat symbol away from becoming another Gotham master. Shen Lian lazily leaned against the banyan tree, sipping the medicinal wine intermittently, and consolidated his new strength in a half-asleep and half-awake state. The strength has now become somewhat special, actually presenting a structure where cold and hot intersect, and the transformation of yin and yang no longer stagnates at all. Unknown pile method, Hunyuan. After being integrated into the Hunyuan 1 pile, the characteristics are different, but there is still a thin layer of window paper between it and further transformation. Shen Lian scanned the eye root meridians. With the help of the synthesis of the stance method, he had already penetrated 5 meridians and was not far from the perfection of the eye root. He let out a long breath, and the strength in his dantian was almost overflowing. Most warriors don't cultivate the 5 innate realms, but they always like to distinguish the strength of their powers, and consider 60 years as a 60-year period of cultivation. Then what am I? The energy is filling up the dantian. It should be at least 5 generations old. Shen Lian drank up the medicinal wine in the gourd, and a waiter diligently brought the wine jar. Ever since the shop assistants learned about Shen Lian's terrifying martial arts skills, they have been eager to sign a contract to sell themselves to Shen Hansheng. After all, demons are rampant nowadays. Even the government office is probably not as safe as a pawnshop. Young master, I see there is a longevity tablet dedicated to Zhang Kui in the medicine shop next door. Do you think we should set up an incense stand in our pawn shop? Shen Lian choked on his drink and quickly waved his hand, saying, no need. Instead, when you purchase items on a daily basis, you should ask around to see if there are any strange or inexplicable troubles. But it's better to be careful. I'll give you some pointers some other day. Thank you, young master. Shen Lian squinted his eyes comfortably. Even though the nutrients brought by the medicinal wine were scarce, the feeling of being slightly tipsy was most suitable in the early spring. After eating 2 fish, he practiced the 3 horizontal exercises at the same time. There was a constant crackling sound. Shen Lian was already used to practicing horizontally, and he glanced at the banyan tree. The bone-shaped elixir fruit grown from the corpse of the Jinwu guard has not yet taken shape, and its growth rate is even slower than that of the original Yue fruit. He couldn't help but feel curious. Could it be possible that some rare treasure would be born? The Jinwu guards on duty are really polite. They not only made nests to attract a large number of fish monsters, but also delivered goods to the door. They are really dedicated to the people. Shen Lian stared at the white bone pill fruit for a long time, and the yin and yang energy unconsciously impacted his meridians. If someone else saw Shen Lian practicing, they would probably be shocked and feel that he was on the verge of going astray at any time. Well, Shen Lian burped and woke up. Unconsciously, he had reached the bottleneck of eye root perfection, and the tempering of the eye root meridians by yin and yang energy was gradually coming to an end. Shen Lian quickly adjusted his attitude and decided to be more serious when facing the bottleneck. Of course, the 3-door horizontal training is still maintained. Shen Lian meticulously let the yin-yang energy spread throughout the meridians at the base of his eyes. He felt his own energy and blood rushing into his pupils, and his vision suddenly changed drastically. It's a bit like the yin-yang eyes. Shen Lian raised his eyebrows and found that there were a few wisps of resentment floating outside the courtyard. In the past, he had to use eye-clearing talisman water to achieve this. It stands to reason that a warrior's 5 innate realms will not extend his supernatural powers. Even if it is the demonic internal strength, one has to practice the corresponding secret techniques. I guess it's because I have a solid foundation, worthy of being called the innate holy body. Infusing the eyes with energy can activate the ability of the yin-yang eyes, but it can only see through demons that are 200 to 300 years old. After all, it is the limitation of my realm. Shen Lian was immersed in the advancement of his realm and once again came into contact with the state of enlightenment after a long absence. But he did not have the illusion that his soul had left his body. It was just that his perspective was rising little by little, and his eyes could not help but fall on the clouds above Yanliang town. I don't know if it's an illusion. As Shen Lian's eye root meridians reached perfection, the clouds seemed to become unnatural, as if they were made up of a ball of cotton wool. The cotton wool is gray and white, and at first glance it looks like the structure of flesh and blood. Shen Lian came out of his state of enlightenment, and the clouds returned to being ordinary. Perhaps the demon's aura from before was tainted with moisture. Even if the Jinwu guards make a big move in Gao Laozhuang, Yanliang town won't be in chaos, right? Shen Lian couldn't help but take Gao Laozhuang seriously, and he kept his yin-yang eyes on at all times. Realm of the innate ear root. Shen Lian's worries subsided a little. Even though the improvement of the 5 innate realms on physical strength was not obvious, strength still required consideration of all aspects. The 5 senses can sometimes play a decisive role. Quote, Shen Lian scratched his ear, and his yin-yang energy instinctively explored the meridians at the base of his ear. By the way, I don't know what realm is above the 5th innate realm. I have to find a chance to get information from the Jinwu guards. Shen Lian planned to take some time every day to inquire around the city. At this time, the unique fragrance of the elixir fruit filled the air. The white bone dan fruit is finally ripe. Shen Lian came back to his senses and smelled a scent similar to bone ashes in his nose. The surface of the fruit hanging from the branch was no different from a skull. The starling was preening its feathers, obviously not interested in the white bone fruit. Shen Lian reached out and picked the white bone fruit. Corpse fruit. It is grown from a banyan tree and placed in a coffin with other objects. It is often buried underground for 7 days and 7 nights to create a lower-level bone instrument. Shen Lian licked his lips, worthy of being the best employee, Brother Shu. Not only can it provide elixir, it can even produce elixir fruits for refining weapons. Used on the bone blade. Shen Lian looked at the bone blade tied to his chest, and then gave up the idea. The bone blade is the fundamental thing for a warrior after all. It would be putting the cart before the horse to hastily refine it into an inferior bone magic weapon. Let's just make a scabbard. I estimate that the bone blade will be promoted to the 3rd level in half a month. By then, the length will be almost finalized. After all, I think my starling hasn't grown in a long time. Even if the scabbard becomes unsuitable after being promoted to the 4th level, it doesn't matter. It would take a long time to gather enough experience, so a lower-level magic weapon would be enough as a transition. Besides, Shen Lian always felt that the corpse fruit was not as simple as it seemed. Shen Lian put away the corpse fruit. It was already getting dark. To ensure that the sharp-toothed warriors advance as quickly as possible, we must work harder. The early spring wind is chilly. Shen Lian greeted the myna bird and went back to the room to rest. He inadvertently looked at the courtyard wall and saw a few hemp ropes swaying in the wind in the cracks of the rough blue bricks. Chapter 70 Born with a blood-eating holy body. First order request. Shen Lian planned to remain in seclusion until he was promoted to a sharp-toothed warrior. There are more than 40 fish fruits, and it will probably take a long time to eat them all. Shen Lian gave up lying down for the time being, and even when he was resting he was still tempering the meridians in his ears. When he focused on practicing martial arts, his progress in cultivation was indeed rapid. Not only did he quickly achieve great success in the 3 horizontal trainings, but he also got a glimpse of the blood-nourishing internal stance, and he was madly digesting the gains. During this period, Yanliang town seemed very lively. A group of opera performers from Daqi town came to Yanliang town and stayed in the opera house in Xicheng district for 3 days. The top courtesan in the Red House in Kangshan town was invited to the Bibo Tower. She was said to be extremely beautiful, but Shen Lian still turned a deaf ear to what was happening outside. Women's playfulness is not as important as martial arts. Sharp-toothed warrior reaches 90.06%, martial arts points +2. Shen Lian nodded in satisfaction, and seeing that it was getting late, he planned to go back to the house to rest. Just now, Fugi hurried into the courtyard and said with an uneasy expression, "Young master, a disciple from the martial arts school just came to the pawn shop." Master Bai accidentally went into a state of infatuation while standing still and was severely injured. Shen Lian looked up at the sky and saw that the full moon was already high in the sky. As far as I can remember, since Bai Haibo opened his martial arts school, due to lack of resources, he mainly used standing meditation to slow down the decline of qi and blood. I only stand in the meditation posture for half an hour in the early morning. Got it. Shen Lian frowned slightly and strode straight towards the Tide Martial Arts School. He felt something was a little off. He maintained his strength to protect himself on the road. The muscles all over his body bulged slightly, which was a precursor to using the immortal bronze body. Compared to the dark alleys, the Tide Martial Arts School is brightly lit. There were more than a dozen children in the courtyard looking around. When they saw Shen Lian coming, they called out to their eldest brother and gathered around him. "Why don't you go home? You can't help much at the martial arts gym, right?" Shen Lian stood still, and the children lowered their heads. "It was my mother who allowed me to stay in the martial arts school. I should be grateful and repay my kindness. Big brother, my home is nearby. I'm not feeling well and have been staying in the martial arts hall recently." The reasons given by the children varied. Shen Lian slowed down his pace and heard a rapid cough coming from the room. He could sense Bai Haibo's weak energy and blood through the wall. "Master Bai." The window opened and Bai Haibo stuck his head out with a pale face. "Disciple, I'm sorry to bother you so late at night." Shen Lian narrowed his eyes and his gaze fell on Bai Jinbao who was standing next to Bai Haibo. Bai Jinbao widened his eyes in fear and shook his head repeatedly. Yin and yang energy surged into his eyes. Sure enough, there was a faint sense of resentment growing in the courtyard. The children didn't say anything, but moved closer to Shen Lian at the same time. Their postures became extremely awkward, as if their joints were dislocated. Death, death, death. The resentment in the children's bodies spread out and they all rushed towards Shen Lian. Shen Lian noticed that there were 7 or 8 people in a remote alley outside who seemed to have wandered in by mistake, but their footsteps were in unison, heading straight for the Tide Martial Arts School. A plan. Even the demons can make plans. Shen Lian's eyes were filled with murderous intent, and he used his keen eyes the moment he came into contact with the child. Identification of hemp rope completed, 9 Qi earthly aversion experience plus 0.01%. Identification of hemp rope completed, 9 Qi earthly aversion experience plus 0.01%. The hemp thread, is it a demon from Gaolaozhuang? Zhu Baji is sewing. Shen Lian discovered that after he had dispelled the resentment in the children's bodies, new resentment appeared, and they still looked like they were possessed by evil spirits. If resentment wasn't harmful, it would be a perpetual motion machine for gaining experience. The ghosts at the source sensed that their resentment was diminishing and seemed to become even more insane. The screams from the children were hysterical and the number of people gathering was increasing. Kindness. Shen Lian felt his neck tighten, as if he was tied up with a rope. And the similar feeling of restraint intensified, soon spreading to his limbs, and wounds appeared at the places where they were tied, and blood oozed out. "Why don't you die?" Several figures pushed open the door, and then Bai Haibo also came to the courtyard. Countless ropes covered Shen Lian's body, and he looked like he was about to be dismembered. The ghost at the source became restless. The tougher the skin and flesh, the more abundant the qi and blood are. "It's not just me. I'm afraid many warriors in Yanliang town have been attacked. The performers in Daqi town and the courtesans in Kangshan town should be one of the ways for the ghosts to spread their nets and control a large number of people. It seems that we will start closing the net tonight." Shen Lian remained calm. Until he found that the ropes that bound him had reached their limit, he immediately infused yin-yang energy into his eyes, and stuck the eye-brightening talisman hidden in his palm directly on his forehead, and instantly everything around him came into view. 20 or 30 people were like puppets. There was a circle of hemp rope wrapped around their necks, and the other end of the rope was far away in the clouds, controlling mortals like a shadow play. Because of the big fish Shen Lian, more and more puppets are rushing to the Tide Martial Arts School. Seeing that Shen Lian was about to be dismembered, resentment filled the air, and he was obviously eager to taste the best blood food. Hey hey hey! The twine tightened, making a sound of being overwhelmed. A thin mist filled the air, and a strong big hand grabbed all the hemp ropes. Veins popped out on his skin, and the ropes could hardly move forward an inch. Shen Lian transformed into a bronze body. The body that was more than 3 meters tall was full of oppression. With a flick of his left hand, Bai Haibo and others flew backwards under the influence of the palm wind. They were not seriously injured, and the resentment in their bodies was completely dissipated. The twine stopped. The ghost at the source seemed a little surprised by Shen Lian. The image of the bronze Dharma body was even more ferocious than the demon, and it seemed as if the tangible blood and energy came into contact with the resentment and actually made crackling sounds in the courtyard. Shen Lian didn't waste any words, and the muscles in his arms expanded to the extreme. Come on, let's have a contest of strength, Increased heartbeat. Boom. Shen Lian's legs sank half a meter into the soil, his chi and blood swept through the courtyard, the stretched hemp rope was pulled back little by little, and the use of wisdom eyes did not stop. Get down. The identities of the two were reversed, and the ghost tried its best to resist the hemp rope, but it was of no avail. In terms of strength, Shen Lian had an absolute advantage. Shen Lian pulled hard. With a ripping sound, the hemp rope fell off along with a large piece of flesh and blood. Shen Lian stared at the sky. The clouds had disappeared. The ghost's real body was severely damaged, but it was far from being fundamentally injured. He put the remains into the core, and couldn't help feeling a sense of urgency. If the ghost is related to Gao Laozhuang, it is probably just the beginning. There is definitely more than one ghost in the 4 towns surrounding the cave. Shen Lian noticed that the Jinwu guards were coming, and after confirming that the people who had fainted would be weak for 2 or 3 months at most, he quickly left the Tide Martial Arts School. Zhu Yihong led a dozen Yamen runners to surround the martial arts hall. Although Bai Haibo and others have lost their memories, anyone with a discerning eye can see it. Black Coffin. Zhang Kui had a fight with the demons. Fortunately, he attracted most of the demons' attention, so the casualties in the city were not serious. Zhu Yihong had a complicated expression, and while thinking, he noticed that Captain Hong kept scratching his back. Captain Hong, are you okay? When the seasons change, the itching becomes unbearable. It's an old hidden injury from my early years. Zhu Yihong's pupils shrank slightly. There were several buttons inlaid on the flesh of Captain Hong's back. Obviously, there are at least 2 tailor shop monsters. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 71 Shen Lian is Zhang Kui. The next morning, paper money fell in the wind, accompanied by funeral music. There are more people who die than live, and few people can live to old age. It is better to return to the mountains than to see people cutting their lungs and livers. Because of the practice of cremation, the funeral customs of the Tang Dynasty changed significantly over the past 1,000 years, and the court's main purpose was to prevent the birth of ghosts. 4 big men carried the coffin on their shoulders and walked along the street. The rest of the family members wore mourning clothes and followed the coffin. They called out the name of the deceased and scattered paper money. After half a day of parading, at noon when the yang energy is the strongest, the family will take out 7 items that the deceased used frequently during his lifetime and hand them over to the pyrotechnician to burn along with the corpse. After they are reduced to ashes, the burial will begin. Others were used to it and watched the funeral procession go away. The big man felt the coffin suddenly become lighter and his steps began to stagger. Amid screams, the coffin fell to the ground on its side, and the relatives could not help but let out heart-wrenching wails. Once the corpse was exposed, it meant that the deceased had died with his eyes open. A woman pushed through the crowd and rushed towards her father who had just died. "Dad, you have a miserable life." Before she could finish her words, she stood there with her eyes wide open, because the coffin was empty and there was no body of her father. What made everyone horrified was that there was an extra piece of cotton cloth in the coffin. The cotton cloth actually had a material similar to human skin, and the pattern was extremely strange, completely outlining the old man's appearance when he was alive. It's like the cotton has completely digested the body. Demon. Seeing this, relatives moved away one after another, and even women did not dare to step forward. The noise soon attracted the Yamen runners, and the street was immediately blocked. 2 Jinwu guards came over. Zhu Yihong had been busy all night and looked exhausted. Wang Xin had just returned to Yanliang town 2 days ago. He was helpless in the face of the unexpected disaster that had befallen Yanliang town. It had taken them more than half a month to find the trace of the painted skin ghost from Gaolaozhuang. The situation is even more serious now. After all, the ghosts involved come from Yongqi Street, which is the heart of the cave. If you are not careful, disaster will befall you. The resentment has dissipated. I can't tell the level of a demon just by looking at the cotton cloth. Alas, this is the third demon from the Yongqi Street tailor shop. Wang Xin continued mockingly, of course, the Qinhu Lord calls the monsters in the shops on Yongqi Street, workers. Wang Xin, should I report this? The Jinwu guards don't have the manpower. The 4 towns near Gaolaozhuang are no exception. I'm afraid the situation in Gaojia town is 10 times more serious. Zhu Yihong, tell Hong'an to be careful and burn any dead bodies immediately from now on. Zhu Yihong replied in a deep voice, including Captain Hong, a total of 27 Yamen runners have had resentment enter their bodies. Part of their flesh and blood has turned into foreign objects similar to buttons, and they are still in the process of removing them. Wang Xin pinched his nose and murmured, cotton cloth, linen thread, buttons. Oh shit. The Jinwu guards have just completed the routine arrangements at Gao village. No, we must eliminate the 3 ghosts before the situation escalates. Wang Xin signaled the bailiff to close the coffin and hurried back to the yamen. Zhu Yihong reminded, you can use the hemp ghost as the key to breaking the situation. According to the traces of the Tide Martial Arts School, the ghost did not please the alchemist and may have suffered heavy damage. Wang Xin was silent for a long time. When you have time, pay attention to Zhang Kui. If we can get more help from alchemists, the tailor case will be much easier. Zhu Yihong looked at Wang Xin's back and her breathing unconsciously quickened. Thinking of Tide Martial Arts School, a pawn shop suddenly flashed through her mind, and the familiar feeling she had when she saw the man in the black coffin from afar came to mind. Impossible. While Zhu Yihong was thinking, he walked towards the Shen family pawnshop unconsciously. The pawnshop was located in a remote location in Xicheng district. Few people passed by the alleys separating the courtyards, and shadows covered most of the aisles. You can see lush banyan trees from a distance, with crows perched on the branches. Zhu Yihong's brows furrowed more and more. She secretly activated her inner strength and noticed that there was no demonic energy around the pawnshop. You know, the spring rain we experienced not long ago was full of evil spirits. Even now, the corners where water remains are still filled with evil spirits. Could it be? Zhu Yihong's pupils trembled as he heard bursts of muffled noises coming from inside. It was obvious that Shen Lian was practicing martial arts, and he could vaguely feel his qi and blood. After waiting for a while, the movement was becoming more and more intense. It sounded like a blacksmith hammering a weapon, and it was not something an ordinary warrior could produce. Zhu Yihong felt as if facing a formidable enemy, with sweat soaking his back. No matter how unbelievable the truth was, as long as she thought about the coincidence involving the pawnshop, Zhu Yihong gradually had an answer. Shen Lian is Zhang Kui. What kind of special qualities does a Taoist priest have that would allow Shen Lian, who had just become a martial artist half a year ago, to defeat demons? And many more. Hu Baocheng, who died in Xicheng district, Yang Weikang, who had been to the pawnshop, Shen Hansheng, who survived Gaolaozhuang, Wen Miao, who was in charge of the Xicheng market, Zhuo Yan, who fled in fear. The pawn shop is the center of a vortex of chaos. Who is he? Zhu Yihong left in a hurry, not daring to stay in the alley. Shen Lian finished his martial arts training and glanced at the courtyard gate. It was impossible for Zhu Yihong to hide the fact that he had reached the ear-root stage. Sure enough, the matter of Tide Martial Arts School can definitely be traced back to the pawn shop. But it doesn't matter. The 1,000 and 10,000 households of the Jinwu Guard have to stay in the cave all year round. How can they have the leisure time to study a warrior like me in depth? Besides, they'd probably think that I am an alchemist. According to the contempt chain, the status of an alchemist should be far higher than that of the Jinwu Guards. Shen Lian understood that promotion in his career was closely related to demons, and killing demons was inevitable, which would sooner or later be exposed to the eyes of the government. How can the progress of the demon's inner strength be compared to my innate horizontal training holy body? Deep blue, add some points. Do you want to consume 3 points to combine the indestructible bronze body and the indestructible merit? The difficulty of Wulu Gong is relatively low. As the other two horizontal trainings have just reached their peak, Wulugong has been promoted to perfection. Well, Shen Lian's flesh and blood squirmed, and the weak parts of his body became tough, while his special scales also thickened. He threw the fish into his mouth as if it were free, and the speed at which his ear meridians opened up became faster. The remains of that ghost can produce 2 Dan fruits, plus the surplus fish fruits. The remaining resources will be enough to support 1 or 2 months. It doesn't matter even if some nutrients are wasted. Shen Lian has already brought the Bai family father and son to the pawnshop. When his magical powers are fully developed, if the hemp thread ghost dares to show up again, he will beat you to death with 1 punch. The Wulugong has been successfully integrated into the immortal bronze body, and you can stop taking drugs. Sharp-toothed warrior 93.78%. 2 meridians at the ear root are connected, so continue taking medicine. Sharp-toothed warrior 96.56%. The blood-nourishing internal stance has achieved minor success, and the Fashion solid stance has been completed. Sharp-toothed warrior 98.87%. Do you want to consume 3 points to combine the indestructible bronze body and Fashion solid power? Determine. Shen Lian's flesh and blood was in a state of repeated expansion and compression. Although his bronze body seemed to be unchanged in height, it was actually even more ferocious. Sharp-toothed warrior 100.01%. Sharp-toothed warrior reaches 100.7%, martial arts points +2. Whether to be promoted to the profession of giant glutton. Chapter 72, Bone Blade Transformation, Giant Ram. Whether to be promoted to the profession of giant glutton. Sheep. It should be another name for sheep. My goodness, the professional name of the starling is the earth dog, and the professional name of the bone blade is the silly sheep. If I can get one of the two, crouching dragon and phoenix, I can bring peace to the world. Now I have both. Shen Lian clapped his hands, very curious about the name of the banyan tree that had been promoted to the 3rd level. The myna bird landed on the branch of the banyan tree and looked around the courtyard with interest, his eyes occasionally glancing at the bone blade tied to Shen Lian's chest. The sharp-toothed warrior is promoted to the giant glutton, martial arts points +20. I can't spend all the points. I can't spend all the points. Shen Lian's points have reached 58. It seems that he can not only use it to synthesize the stance and horizontal training, but also the synthesis of fighting methods must be put into consideration. He felt the bone blade was slightly hot. Bone blade, please be more powerful. If you can become a handy weapon, I will consider investing points in learning a sword technique as well. Click click click. The bone blade made a cracking sound. Shen Lian was startled and quickly took out the bone blade, only to find that the blade was still intact, but it was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The ropes that bound her broke, and the crystal-clear bones looked more and more like jade. The handle is made of fine mahogany, embellished with 2 agate stones shaped like eyeballs, and at the end you can see a lying sheep ornament carved from jade. When the transformation began, the accessories of the lying sheep also became hideous. It has some gluttonous characteristics. The standard style is the common Tang Dao in the Tang Dynasty, except that the blade is slightly wider and thicker, and a closer look at the edge reveals criss-crossing saw teeth. This thing, the bone blade, doesn't look like a weapon at all, it's more appropriate to regard it as a work of art. The old man had been searching for the bone blade in his study for some time, and it was obvious that he was obsessed with it. The original value of the blade should have been over 100 taels. It is heavier than ordinary weapons, but it has not yet been finalized. Shen Lian was afraid that the old man would remember him, so he hid the bone blade behind a banyan tree. Then he tried to perfect the bull demon's bone refining technique, and another explosion occurred in his body. The spine, in particular, is tempered repeatedly with the help of yin and yang energy. Shen Lian has become accustomed to the possibility of paralysis if he is not careful, and the pain does not even affect his sleep. The transformation of the bone blade lasted for 3 days. During this period, there was quite a commotion in the government office, which should have been caused by the demons coming for Gao Laozhuang. Fortunately, the casualties among the people did not continue to increase. Shen Lian regretted that the bull demon's bone refining skills had not yet been perfected. Is the bull demon's bone refining technique more difficult to break through than I imagined? Or do I need to find a demon to stimulate the potential of my own tendons and bones? Shen Lian estimated that the tempering method explored by Sun Dewei had flaws. After all, the latter had never reached perfection. As for changing to heavy blows, Dang Ding no longer had enough strength. He focused on nourishing the blood and practicing internal stance, occasionally practicing a set of debate palm. When the bone blade was about to transform, Shen Lian opened his eyes with foresight and heard a crisp sound from the bone blade that made his teeth itch. Ah! The myna bird was circling continuously, flapping its wings, and the branches of the banyan tree were swaying slightly, obviously celebrating the fact that the second brother's cultivation had exceeded 2,000 years. Who could have imagined that there were 3 giant monsters in the pawnshop yard? Shen Lian quickly took out the bone blade. The blade was more than 3 feet long and was similar to an ordinary Tang sword, but it weighed 70 or 80 kilograms. The crisp sound caused the blade to be covered with dense cracks. The cracks are dark red, like blood stains left after being soaked in blood. Not only did it not damage the entire bone blade, it even added an indescribable ferocity. Although there is no blood, there is an illusion of a weapon that has been through many battles, and blood may drip from the tip of the knife at any time. Shen Lian held the bone blade and swung it carefully, increasing the strength he used little by little to prevent the blade from breaking suddenly. As a result, even with 100% of his strength, the blade still did not collapse. Unfortunately. Quote. Shen Lian gestured with a wry smile. The current length of the bone blade was very suitable for normal conditions. It was indeed necessary to master a sword technique. However, after transforming into a bronze body that was 3 or 4 meters long, the bone blade immediately became a bit useless. If I can maintain the bronze body at around 2 meters, I should still be able to use it to some extent. If I continue to increase the size, it will not be worth it. What? Shen Lian took a breath of cold air. He subconsciously activated his horizontal training, but it was only limited to the flesh and blood on his arm. But the bone blade actually produced a subtle reaction. Shen Lian narrowed his eyes upon seeing this. Veins covered the surface of his arms, which swelled up like air, with sharp bone spurs protruding from the joints. Click click click. The bone blade began to hum, and the cracks on the blade opened up. The blade was covered with cracks like scars, filled with unspeakable evil intent, and the handle was madly devouring the yin and yang energy. After Shen Lian maintained this for 10 breaths, the bone blade began to devour his own blood again. Half of the courtyard was shrouded in bloody sword light. Shen Lian stabbed the bone blade into the wall brick, but did not feel anything like cutting tofu. He realized that the sharpness depended on the strength of the incoming force. Are you kidding me? With my level of cultivation, I can only barely control it. If a small amount of yin and yang energy is maintained, there will be obvious resistance against the wall tiles. It can be seen that the road ahead is long and arduous to slay demons and monsters with a sword. Shen Lian poured all of his yin and yang energy into the bone blade. Clang! The serrations on the blade edge protrude outward, and the whole weapon seems to come alive. He slashed his right arm, sparks flew, and although there was resistance on the blade, it was not a problem to cut through the flesh. Shen Lian retracted the horizontal sword, and the bone blade returned to a 3-foot jade tang sword. In normal state, you can use the bone blade at will, but in bronze body form, you still have to use fists and palms as the main method. After all, the bone blade looks too evil and it is easy to attract the covetousness of others. Shen Lian wrapped the blade with a cloth belt and tied it around his waist. It's time to complete the scabbard. Then use the white bone pill to refine the scabbard into a magic weapon. It can also cover up the abnormality of the bone blade on weekdays. As for the swordsmanship, Shen Lian's mind moved slightly, and he soon came up with a plan. The bone blade is suitable for a one-move instant kill sword technique, which can be used as a trump card. It has to be the ghost market again. There has been no activity this month and I don't know when it will reopen. Shen Lian planned to find a blacksmith shop early tomorrow morning. It turned out that the customers entering and leaving the pawnshop were worried, talking in low voices, and mentioned Zhang Kui from time to time. Shen Lian learned from Fugi that the government had temporarily blocked Xing'an Street in Dongcheng district, and now the entire Yanliang town was in panic. It is said that the 2 men died on Xing'an Street in the middle of the night and their heads were missing. The Jinwu guards should have found any traces of ghosts on Xing'an Street, as there were a large number of talismans placed at the entrances and exits of the street alone. Twine ghost, huh? Shen Lian restrained his smile, and after dinner, he walked towards Xing'an Street under the cover of night. As far as I can remember, most of the tailoring businesses in Yanliang town are concentrated in the southern part of the city, so the number of tailoring shops on Xing'an Street should be relatively high. Shen Lian glanced at the bone blade and murmured calmly. A metal scabbard is nice, but I've heard that leather can also be used to make a scabbard. Chapter 73. You are a good material for making a scabbard. As soon as Shen Lian arrived in Dongcheng district, he sensed the strong resentment. Moreover, the resentment gathered and did not dissipate, filling every corner of Xing'an Street. Faintly, one could see spiritual patterns flashing on the ground at the edge of the street. A generous gesture, at least a mid-level spiritual talisman. After the government locked onto the ghost, they immediately used talismans to block off Xing'an Street. I'm afraid the hundreds of mortals inside didn't have time to evacuate yet. Shen Lian shook his head slightly. As long as the ghost that is the source of resentment can be eliminated in time, the people can be saved, otherwise half of the city will suffer. The Jinwu guards were helpless as 3 ghosts had already arrived within just a few days. They couldn't use the same method they used to deal with the painted skin ghost. After all, no one could guarantee that the disaster in Gao village would be resolved in half a month. During this period, once the number of ghosts increases, the balance between humans and ghosts will be unbalanced. The consequences could be disastrous. Shen Lian wore a bamboo hat and maneuvered around the bailiffs. When the power was infused into the eyes, what came into view was a large amount of hemp rope, like a spider web, almost covering the entire street, which was creepy compared to the perspective seen through the yin-yang eyes. At this time, Xing'an Street was brightly lit and the doors of all tailor shops were open. The situation in the government office doesn't look optimistic. Shen Lian walked towards the tailor shop with great interest. Uncontrollable crying could be heard from the shop. There was a woman holding a child and crying uncontrollably, with 2 yamen runners beside her. Because of the shortage of yamen runners, the middle-aged man left the hope of survival to his wife and daughter, and knelt in the corner waiting to die. There were bruises on their necks, and they were hung in the air tied with hemp ropes, which would tighten a little every few moments. The yamen runner held a blade with talismans painted on it and carefully cut the hemp rope between the mother and daughter. Don't be afraid. Half an incense stick will definitely break the twine. When the time comes, you will immediately evacuate Xing'an Street. There will naturally be yamen runners waiting to meet you at the intersection. Where's Daddy? Daddy has Zhang Kui's blessing, everything will be fine. The middle-aged man's face turned pale, but he continued to comfort the little girl. He lit the incense and candles respectfully, knelt down in front of the newly erected statue of Zhang Kui, and muttered words that everything was fine. The middle-aged man knew that praying to God might not be effective. He saw with his own eyes the old man next door being beheaded. He was still talking and laughing one breath ago, but in the next he was dead. Master Zhang Kui, I don't mind dying, just protect my wife and daughter. They have been suffering with me. At this moment, boom, the ground in the southwest corner shook, accompanied by uncontrolled resentment. There were hemp threads growing in the cracks between the wall tiles in Xing'an Street, and their color had turned blood red. It could be vaguely seen that they seemed to be pieced together to form a wedding dress. The bailiff was so frightened that he couldn't stop shaking. They understood that since ghosts could influence the environment, their existence was likely close to 1,000 years old. The hundreds of people in Xing'an Street might have died at the hands of the ghost. The demon with 700 or 800 years of experience is beyond the imagination of ordinary people. The blades in the hands of the yamen runners fell off, and a hemp rope appeared around their necks. The hemp rope slowly tightened, and because of suffocation, the 2 people's breathing became heavier. The mother and daughter had fainted, and their faces turned purple. The middle-aged man desperately crawled towards his wife and daughter. Just when they were about to die, they suddenly felt the hemp rope around their necks loosen. The bailiff came to his senses and found that his hemp rope had broken. They noticed later that there was a man wearing a conical hat and a long sword on his waist in the shop, sipping tea in a very familiar manner. Who? The bailiff took out a drop of eye-brightening talisman water in disbelief. What he saw next was simply shocking. The man's body was densely tied with hemp ropes, there were at least thousands of them, and the number of hemp ropes was still increasing. Shen Lian yawned and tied himself up with the hemp rope he had taken from the necks of several people. The frantic tightening of countless hemp ropes actually accelerated the tempering of the spine, causing a deafening sound to be heard from the bones. Shen Lian strolled around Xing'an Street, and took any hemp rope he saw. He would use his keen eyes from time to time to ensure that the hemp rope would not damage the roots, and at the same time, fleece the monster. Identification of hemp rope completed, 9 Chi earthly aversion experience plus 0.01%. Identification of hemp rope completed, 9 Chi earthly aversion experience plus 0.01%. Even though it's a drop in the bucket compared to the experience progress of Juki Dian, a little bit of progress still counts, at least it can bring it closer to 20%. After the bailiff regained some strength, he drew the sword from his waist. I couldn't tell whether the man in front of me was a human or a ghost. Shen Lian turned to the middle-aged man and asked, "Boss, if we want to make a scabbard out of leather, what material should we choose?" The middle-aged man was confused and astonished. Shen Lian repeated it again. "Let me see." Shen Lian placed the bone blade on the counter. The old wooden board was somewhat overwhelmed by the weight. Can such a heavy weapon be sheathed in leather? The middle-aged man measured the size of the bone blade with great effort. As soon as his fingers touched the edge of the blade, his skin was broken and bleeding. The blood stained the cloth strip that wrapped the blade, but soon the red stain on the cloth strip slowly disappeared. "Sir, I don't have enough materials to support it." Rumble. There was a huge creature crawling on the street, and a terrifying feeling of oppression came over me. It is indeed this ghost made of hemp rope. I wonder what the situation is like in Gao village to breed such a weird monster. Shen Lian picked up the bone blade, and a shadow of 7 or 8 meters long pressed in front of the door. The body of the hemp ghost is extremely fat, with hemp ropes all over its body, and there is a concave notch on its head. Perhaps it is because of the relationship with Gao Laozhuang that the characteristics of a guinea pig can be seen. The Jinwu guards were rushing over, and at the same time, the Yamen runners were evacuating the people. Hoo. The hot air from the hemp ghost's mouth and nose hit the doors and windows. There was resentment in its eyes, but more of it was greed, because the energy and blood emitted by Shen Lian was like delicious food. If the latter's expression could be a little more fearful, it would be great. The hemp ghost stretched its head into the shop, and all the hemp ropes were wrapped around Shen Lian. Shen Lian seemed to be unaffected at all. He forced himself to walk with difficulty despite the restraint of the hemp rope, and whispered something in the middle-aged man's ear. "What if we use the skin of this monster to make a scabbard?" The middle-aged man couldn't help but feel his scalp tingling, and subconsciously looked towards the statue of Zhang Kui in the corner. The statue was holding a bone whip, and under his feet were suppressed demons. Shen Lian stared at the twine ghost with burning eyes. The hemp ghost's facial features twisted as he realized that Shen Lian had the same idea, and even more malicious. This blood-eating person actually wanted to eat him alive. Jia. Shen Lian's blood and energy were unreserved, and the hemp rope that bound him immediately ignited a faint flame, and the tempering of the bones in his body finally came to an end. Bull Demon Bone Refining Technique perfect. Do you want to consume 3 points to combine the indestructible bronze body and the Bull Demon Bone Refining skill? Determine. The middle-aged man stared at Shen Lian, whose body swelled at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the muscles on his back formed a hideous ghost face. Zhang Kui. Chapter 74. Is this the 5th level of innate realm? The twine is stretched straight. Shen Lian's special scales covered his entire body. At the same time, because the horizontal chain was being synthesized, he felt a tingling pain in his bones. Bang. The hemp ropes kept breaking, and Shen Lian's scales began to show damage. The twine ghost was a little panicked, but then he couldn't hold back his greed and decided to eat him. If he ate him, his cultivation would surely surpass 1,000 years. Shen Lian was passively pulled to the street, and the hemp ghost watched the flesh and blood approaching him little by little. Occasionally, when the hemp rope could not be pulled, the hemp rope ghost would express more resentment, and Shen Lian looked like he was barely resisting. Eat. If I eat you, I can go back to Yongqi Street. When the two were in a stalemate, the Jinwu guards have arrived, all with looks of surprise and doubt on their faces. Zhang Kui. The first time Wang Xin saw Shen Lian's bronze body, even though he couldn't see his appearance clearly, he still couldn't hide his shock, because judging from the surface, Shen Lian was undoubtedly a congenital warrior. But, how could there be someone in the world with such a strong body that could withstand the resentment of ghosts and monsters and not die? Can a warrior really do that? Zhu Yihong has already determined that Zhang Kui's inexplicable sense of familiarity comes from Shen Lian. No. Wang Xin gritted his teeth and said, "We can't just sit there and wait for death. If the stalemate between the two is broken, we will all die on Xing'an Street. Li Shun, how many pairs of eyes do you still have that can be used?" 2 pairs. You keep an eye on Zhang Kui's condition. We will take this opportunity to set up the talisman. If Zhang Kui shows any signs of physical and spiritual decay, let us know immediately. Understood. Li Shun was practicing the multi-eyed sutra. Then, under the stimulation of his internal force, pupils appeared in his palms and a dazzling golden light flashed across. Wang Xin mixed the ashes of the 3 burnt ghost exorcising talismans with the black dog's blood, then opened his mouth and spit out a flame that heated up the talisman water. Then he began to draw talismans within 100 meters around the hemp string ghost. The talisman is a unique means used by alchemists. If the Jinwu guards want to use it, they must consume their own energy and spirit as a medium, which can easily deplete their lifespan. As for warriors, just witnessing the process of drawing the talisman would make them lose their souls. Wang Xin quickly finished writing a line of spells. He noticed from the corner of his eye that Li Shun had a strange expression on his face, and couldn't help asking, what happened to Zhang Kui? Ghost. The resentment in the ghost's body is rapidly dissipating. Li Shun murmured in disbelief. On the surface, it seemed that the hemp thread ghost was eroding Zhang Kui's body and soul by using his resentment to consume him, and Zhang Kui was indeed suppressed. But, after repeated observations, Li Shun came to a completely opposite conclusion. Instead of declining, Zhang Kui's energy and blood increased a lot in a short period of time, and part of the strength seemed to be tempering the meridians. Zhang Kui is absorbing resentment to cultivate his ear meridians. Are you kidding me? Wang Xin couldn't help but open his mouth wide, and the other Jinwu guards had the same expression. The Jinwu guards present had been in service for at least 5 years, and even the one with the lowest cultivation level had already reached the perfect level of the tongue root stage. Wang Xin is at the root feeling stage, the peak of the 5 innate realms. But let alone facing a demon with 700 or 800 years of cultivation, they would have to make some arrangements before they could kill even a demon that had been around for decades. So you tell me, the Zhang Kui who single-handedly solved the fish disaster. The Zhang Kui who was not at a disadvantage in the face of the hemp ghost. Is he only in the 5th realm of innateness? So who are they? A baby who just learned to crawl. Li Shun murmured, no, Zhang Kui is more than just the ear root stage. Wang Xin breathed a sigh of relief. At least he is at the 6th level of Yuandan. I have seen a centurion at the Yuandan level take action, but it is not as good as Zhang Kui's. However, since Zhang Kui is a natural alchemist. No, he broke through. Shen Lian smiled strangely as he chewed the hemp thread. Nutrients emerged in an endless stream, allowing the bull demon bone refining technique to be successfully integrated into the immortal bronze body. The surplus nutrients prompted the strength to penetrate the ear meridians. After entering the tongue root stage, nearly half of the 5 innate realms have been completed. 9 Chi Earth aversion reaches 20.01%, martial arts points +4. The hemp rope was torn, and a bone spine broke free. After the bull demon's bone refining technique was integrated, the end of the spine became extremely sharp. Well, it seemed to be more useful than the evil bone blade. The twine ghost was stunned. Due to the massive loss of resentment, its intelligence became a little dazed, and it was at a loss for a moment when faced with a sudden turn of events. Shouldn't Zushi's body and soul have been severely injured, so how come his aura is getting stronger? Boom! Shen Lian disappeared from the spot in an instant. The Jinwu guards could only barely see his movements. The white bone spine seemed to hit hard like a heavy hammer. The air waves swept across. There was a deep hole in the twine ghost's head, his skin was torn and his brain exploded. Roar! When Wang Xin heard the ghost's roar again, he couldn't help but feel a bit of panic in it. His limbs instinctively moved away from Shen Lian, and the hunter and prey roles were reversed. Bang bang bang! The great steel palm was swung out continuously, and the wisdom eye was used the moment it made contact. In order to save its life, the ghost had to give up its own resentment and at the same time try to escape by using the hemp rope, but it was blocked by the white bone spine every time. In the eyes of the watching Jinwu guards, Shen Lian completely treated the ghosts as consumables. As if he was reluctant to kill it, he forced the twine ghost to cut off its tail to survive, and then Shen Lian swallowed all the resentment in the air. The methods are more evil than those of the devil. Then, the bony spine cut open the skin on the hemp ghost's back. Shen Lian tore off a piece of skin, and the hemp ghost rolled on the ground in pain. The twine ghost was a bloody mess, its neck was broken, and its head was no longer moving. Wang Xin looked at Li Shun and said in a deep voice, "Are you sure? Zhang Kui is in the 5th realm of innateness." Li Shun secretly wondered if he had blinded himself, or maybe it was just a trick of Zhang Kui. The 5 innate realms really could not be associated with Zhang Kui. Only Zhu Yihong seemed to be hesitant to speak. She witnessed Shen Lian's journey into martial arts, and the latter indeed seemed to have reached the 5th level of innate realm step by step. When the Jinwu guards saw that the ghost was about to be killed, they quickly withdrew from Xing'an Street, and the Yamen runners took the opportunity to evacuate all the people. We thought we were going to risk our lives to siege the Twine Ghosts, but it turned out to be extremely smooth. Thump. The Twine Ghost fell to the ground. Shen Lian stopped using his wisdom eye in time. The remains left by the hemp string ghost were half a meter in size, a ball of strange hemp string that looked like flesh and blood. After all, it's a nearly 1,000-year-old ghost. Maybe it can produce precious elixir fruits. What? Shen Lian noticed a foreign object from the wreckage and fumbled out half of an invitation. The invitation from Gao Laozhuang was successfully identified. 9 Dian experience plus 0.89%. Question mark. Invitation to Gao Laozhuang. Written by Mr. Gao. You can go to the Gao family mansion with the invitation to attend the banquet. Remember, Don T look back, Don T look back. What the hell? Shen Lian put the remains into the fruit core, deliberately separated out a piece of ghost skin, and used talisman water to remove the resentment contained in the ghost skin to avoid hurting mortals. If he used his wisdom eyes to dispel the resentment, Gipi would not be able to withstand the overbearing magic. The remaining 2 ghosts are nowhere to be found. I'm afraid they are frightened out of their wits. Shen Lian threw the ghost skin and 5 taels of silver in front of the tailor shop and walked away. At the same time, the ghosts that were wreaking havoc in Daqi Town and Kangshan Town inexplicably calmed down, and they all looked towards Yanliang Town. Chapter 75 The Key to the 6th Consciousness. Shen Lian returned to the pawn shop and immediately stuffed the remains of the Twine Ghost into the banyan tree hole. Absorb the Twine Ghost, and gain plus 1.03% experience from the corpse-seeking Taoist priest. If it was the corpse of a whole Twine Ghost, the experience would be at least 3 or 4 times higher. But there is no other way. The storage space in the fruit core is really limited. Shen Lian swept across the branches and saw tender buds of elixir fruit sprouting. A ghost with 700 or 800 years of cultivation should be able to produce good elixir fruit. Then he took out the strange invitation. The Jinwu guards probably haven't penetrated deep into the heart of Gao village yet. I wonder if they have come into contact with any demons with a cultivation of more than 5,000 years. Master Gao is marrying his daughter. Is there Zhu Baji in Gao Manor? It might be possible. Shen Lian smiled bitterly and used his wisdom eye again. The invitation from Gao Laozhuang was successfully identified, 9 Dian experience plus 0.01%. He discovered that resentment had grown out of nowhere in the invitation. If it was not eliminated, the invitation would definitely undergo indescribable changes. The invitation can continuously extract the 9 Qi earthly aversion experience, but Shen Lian's strength surged into his eyes. He carefully observed the efficiency of the invitation in breeding resentment. It would take at least half a year to recover to its full potential. Let's get rid of it, so as not to get involved in the trouble of Gao Laozhuang. Looks like I have to keep stacking armor, and I can't stop practicing. Shen Lian threw the invitation into the banyan tree hole. Accept the invitation from Gao Laozhuang, experience of the corpse hunting Taoist priest plus 2.77%. The Taoist priest who searches for corpses has reached 10.36%, martial arts points plus 2. The banyan tree really doesn't care about food, but the resentment contained in the invitation is too thin, so I guess it can't produce any magical fruits, right? Shen Lian looked at the banyan tree, and the myna bird that had been missing in recent days also flew into the yard. Ah, by the way, Brother Ba, you used to spend all day in the pawn shop appraising treasures, but now you have become much more lazy and you are always distracted. 8th Master only plays big. I warn you not to mess around. Don't forget that you are just a crow. Stupid. The starling spoke with disdain and went to rest in the bird's nest built on the branch of the banyan tree. Shen Lian took out 2 fish fruits and threw them into the bird's nest. After the sharp-toothed warrior was promoted to the giant eater ram, the demand for resources actually decreased, and he could occasionally give some benefits to the former best employees. Giant food supplement. Greatly increases the digestive power of the stomach and intestines, greatly increases the capacity of the stomach and intestines, and slightly increases the range of digestible food. Closing square bracket. Shen Lian chewed the fish fruit in his mouth. The total amount of nutrients produced did not change, but the nutrients acting on himself were 20% more than before. This shows that ingredients like fish fruit can be almost 100% digestible. Even, Shen Lian took out a century-old poisonous herb from the fruit core. After swallowing it, his face turned slightly pale and it was quickly and completely digested. In theory, I can survive in any barren place. I used to eat dirt, and now even a little poison doesn't matter. Ah, no matter if it's fishy or smelly, it tastes delicious in your mouth. Eat your fish fruit. Shen Lian gave a middle finger and looked at the street with a mysterious look. After the death of the twine ghost, the other two ghosts went dormant. Even the food supplement magic power could hardly detect them. It's really a pity. Shen Lian yawned and lay down under the banyan tree. It's better to leave the troublesome task of searching for ghosts to the Jinwu guards. You can just take advantage of the opportunity to get something for free. Why bother yourself with such a thankless task? The next few days, Shen Lian shifted his focus to tempering the meridians at the root of his tongue, while also practicing internal blood-nourishing exercises. After all the horizontal exercises he was doing had already been integrated into one. In his spare time, he ordered a coffin in preparation for refining the corpse fruit. Since the scabbard was to be buried, the size of the coffin was specially designed for a child. Otherwise, an ordinary coffin would have to hollow out at least half of the courtyard. Shen Lian waits for the tailor case to develop. As a result, the practice of the tongue root stage has been put on track, and even the blood-nourishing inner posture is only a millimeter away from the Great Chengdu, but there is still no movement in the city. The demons never showed up, but it was the Great Monument Palm that took the lead in reaching perfection. Shen Lian took the opportunity to summon the profession panel. Do you want to consume 2 points to combine the Tide Strike Fist and the Great Monument Palm? Determine. Shen Lian couldn't help but perform the Tide Strike Fist, and the contents of the Great Steel Palm flooded into his mind. The two fist and palm martial arts merged in the collision. He seemed to be in a passive state of enlightenment, piecing together martial arts in the most appropriate way. The mist formed by the evaporation of sweat rose up, the true meaning of the fists and palms brought about strange phenomena, and the salty smell of sea water spread in the courtyard out of thin air. The true meaning of the Tide Strike Fist is like the endless waves, while the true meaning of the Great Steel Palm is like the immovable and majestic like a rock. The two true intentions merged and were biased according to Shen Lian's wishes, still mainly using the Tide Strike Fist, and the waves swept across the courtyard. With every punch and palm strike, the surging might of the sea is vividly displayed. Shen Lian's fists turned into a coon whale swimming proudly in the ocean. As the fusion intensified, the image of the coon whale became more and more real. Rumble. He didn't use any strength, but the wind from his palm created a wave of 2 or 3 meters high, almost blowing away the fruits and vegetables planted in the corner. There were servants coming in and out of the courtyard, but they were already used to it. Even Bai Haibo, who was temporarily staying in the pawnshop, was not surprised at all. With Shen Lian's talent in martial arts, it was normal for him to innovate. What is the true meaning of martial arts? After Bai Haibo saw the bronze body image representing the ultimate horizontal training, all of Shen Lian's martial arts practices seemed unremarkable. After completely mastering the fist and palm movements, Shen Lian stood in the courtyard with his eyes closed to rest. It seems that I need to spend more time practicing new fighting styles. If I just use monsters as punching bags, my fighting style will improve too slowly. Unknown Fist Tide. Let's call it the Sea Tide Fist. It can already be considered a superior fighting style. Tide refers to the true meaning comprehended from the fighting method. If it continues to rise, the true meaning of Haichaochuan will be closer to the ocean. Of course, the premise is that the subsequent integrated playing style does not distort the true meaning. Shen Lian looked at the career panel. Martial arts. Unknown stance, Hunyuan, immortal bronze body dharma, sea tide fist, tide, nourishing blood internal stance, minor success. The martial arts column has become neat and clear, which is a bit strange. It means that there will inevitably be a vacuum period before the ghost market reopens. When I can lie flat, I feel a little uncomfortable. People are just mean. Shen Lian shook his head slightly, his eyes fixed on the fruits on the banyan tree branches. The fruits bred by the invitation looked like vivid eyeballs. 2 days later, the two fruits matured one after another. Shen Lian took advantage of the time when the starling was out and picked it off quickly. The first was the elixir fruit grown from the remains of the hemp ghost. Its refreshing fragrance was so refreshing that Shen Lian couldn't help but whet his appetite. Devil's thread fruit. Grown from the banyan tree, it has the effect of nourishing the dog's spirit after consumption. All the elixirs related to ghosts are for souls, but the previous blood money fruit was only bred by ordinary ghosts, and the effect of nourishing the soul is limited. The ghost thread fruit should be different. Shen Lian thought about it carefully and realized that the 3 souls of a person are Taiguang, Xuanling and Yujing, and the 7 spirits are Fenshigo, Fushi, Kuian, Tunze, Faidu, Chuji and Chufei. The corpse dog soul is related to perception, which can assist in the practice of the 5 innate realms. Shen Lian bit off some of the fruit flesh and tasted it briefly. After the food was digested, the nutrients rushed directly to the Niwen palace, and his consciousness fell into emptiness. When Shen Lian opened his eyes, it was already evening. He stood there for 3 or 4 hours without realizing it. The ghost thread fruit did not cause his meridians to open up on their own, but his 5 senses were significantly enhanced. Simply put, the medicinal power of the ghost thread fruit can lay the foundation. The process of digesting the medicinal power of the ghost thread fruit is too slow. If I swallow it all at once, I will probably be unconscious for 7 or 8 days. Shen Lian noticed that the elixir fruit had been exposed for a long time, but the medicinal power had hardly been lost, so he simply threw the ghost thread fruit into the gourd. Perhaps nutrients will be wasted, but it is within an acceptable range. Shen Lian took a sip of wine. The medicinal power was nourishing the corpse dog's soul silently, which in turn made its perception reach its peak. The gourd has been affected by various kinds of elixirs. If things continue like this, it might have the potential to transform into a lower-level magical instrument. I don't know if it's an illusion. Compared to when the gourd was first purchased, the withered yellow color now shows a hint of green. Shen Lian hung the gourd around his waist and used his keen eyes to identify the other eyeball fruit, but the information he got shocked him. 6 consciousness fruit. Grown from the banyan tree, taking it helps to realize the 6th consciousness. 6 senses. Buddhism seems to have a similar saying. In addition to the 5 senses of eyes, ears, mouth, nose, tongue and body, there is also a 6th sense composed of consciousness. Once consciousness is awakened, the 5 senses can briefly reach a state similar to enlightenment. Whatever the material of the invitation, even if there is no resentment at all, it can breed the 6 consciousness fruit. Shen Lian was playing with the 6 senses fruit and instinctively wanted to swallow it. He packed the 6 consciousness fruit into a wooden box and placed it carefully inside the fruit core. He had no intention of eating it right away to avoid wasting it. Since the 6 consciousness fruit is only used to assist in understanding, it means that it is very likely that there will be no gain after taking it. If Shen Lian wanted to ensure that he could successfully comprehend consciousness, he would probably have to perfect his 5 innate senses first. At the same time, 1/6 consciousness fruit would definitely not be enough. We can't let go of the other 2 ghosts from Gaolaozhuang. There may be invitations hidden in their flesh and blood. We should find a chance to catch them all. Shen Lian narrowed his eyes. The hemp thread ghost has been dead for a long time. The current Yanliang town is calm and peaceful, even more stable than before the accident. It is difficult to find the ghost. I just don't believe it. Demons will eventually show their true colors. And I feel like the atmosphere in Yanliang town is getting more and more wrong. Although it is not a festival, there are still merchants from Daqi town and Kangshan town coming to Yanliang town. Could it be that the number of ghosts in the city has increased again? The government had no idea what to do, and several small-scale curfews had little effect. There were even Jinwu guards patrolling the streets late at night. Just like the painted skin ghost, it seems that the ghosts born in the cave are extremely secretive. Shen Lian frequently traveled to various urban areas to inquire about the news, and only heard that Yanliang town was about to hold a temple fair, but the specific reason was unknown. As for the scabbard, the middle-aged man has been working hard, but the tailor shop has no intention of opening. Shen Lian secretly kept an eye on the tailor shop, and when the blood-nourishing inner support was about to be promoted to great perfection, the shadow of the so-called temple fair could already be seen in the city. Bright red silk cloths were tied everywhere, making it look like a New Year's market or a marriage recruitment ceremony. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 76 What is a swordsmanship genius? Shen Lian could see new decorations in the town every day. The sudden temple fair encountered no resistance, which most likely involved demons. He even suspected that the starling was planning to cause trouble at the temple fair. No matter how you look at it, there's a sense that a storm is about to come. Shen Lian chose to sit back and wait. In particular, he noticed that the imperial court had already transferred the Jinwu guards from Daqi town and Kangshan town, so he only had to follow behind and grab the heads. He practiced the blood-nourishing inner stance patiently, intending to obtain the scabbard after achieving great success. The bottleneck of Dacheng did not last long. The rising qi and blood were like substance, and a dull sound like beating a drum came from the chest and abdomen. The yin and yang energy wrapped around the blood-nourishing energy and continued to flow along the meridians. However, it was only maintained within the scope of the courtyard. The blood-nourishing power could not threaten the yin-yang power, and the two did not form a conflict in the dantian. The blood-nourishing power is relatively gentle and restrained, and is indeed suitable for assisting horizontal training. Shen Lian restrained his strength, and his dantian gradually became stable. Nizhuang Dacheng. After Shen Lian opened his eyes, he looked towards the courtyard gate and said to himself subtly, "Master Zhu, you actually had time to come all the way to deliver the scabbard." The door opens. I just happened to have nothing to do, so I passed by the pawn shop. Zhu Yihong held a leather scabbard with an extremely complicated expression. Judging from Shen Lian's appearance, his temperament is more like that of an ordinary scholar, and he cannot be compared with the giant who is as strong as a mountain. Which Shen Lian is the real Shen Lian? Zhu Yihong looked around the courtyard. There were obvious traces of residual strength on Shen Lian's body, proving that he was indeed practicing martial arts. Perhaps the 5 innate realms mentioned by Li Shun were not fake. A Taoist priest, a warrior, or a demon in human skin. Shen Lian, the scabbard is made of ghost skin after all. Expose it to the sun every 2 or 3 days to prevent it from breeding resentment. What if it turns into a ghost? Zhu Yihong was speechless, and realized belatedly that Shen Lian was a vicious man who had killed hundreds, if not thousands, of demons with his punches. She handed the scabbard to Shen Lian. The scabbard exudes a faint fishy smell, and its size fits the bone blade very well. After being treated by the middle-aged man in a manner similar to soaking it in copper water, the hardness of the scabbard is no weaker than that of ordinary metals. There are clever buttons on the back that can extend the scabbard to 4 feet in length. The two were silent, until Shen Hansheng suddenly came to the courtyard with tea and snacks, and said to Zhu Yihong with a smile, "Miss Zhu, please take a seat. If we are negligent, please forgive us." After Shen Hansheng finished speaking, he left the yard, and used peanuts to lure away the starling that was eating the melon. The corner of Shen Lian's mouth twitched as he thought of how Shen Hansheng had been talking about getting married and having children recently. It was obvious that he was a little crazy. Zhu Yihong also felt uncomfortable all over. "Shen Lian, do you also practice swordsmanship on a daily basis?" "Occasionally." Zhu Yihong looked at Shen Lian as he sheathed the bone blade. He didn't look like a master of swordsmanship at all, and it was very likely that he didn't even have the habit of practicing with the sword. As for the bone blade, it was completely flashy in her eyes. Zhu Yihong really couldn't understand why Shen Lian used ghost skin to make the scabbard. If any demon noticed it, it would probably bring disaster upon itself. "Are you fishing?" She thought of the scene where Shen Lian swallowed up his resentment and couldn't help but shudder. Shen Lian stuffed all the snacks into his mouth without hesitation. "Master Zhu, you didn't come to the pawn shop just for the scabbard, did you?" Zhu Yihong chose to come here privately, which means that the government office did not know that he was Zhang Kui. "Shen Lian, you can guess that the temple fair in the city is related to Gao Laozhuang, but I tell you, the real situation is 10,000 times more serious." Zhu Yihong's eyes flushed red as he continued in a deep voice. "On the surface, there is no demonic activity in Yanliang town, but in reality, everything is in chaos." She gritted her teeth and muttered, "Based on the traces we found alone, there are 8 ghosts that escaped from Gao Laozhuang in the city. It means that if the ghosts riot, there will be countless casualties in Yanliang town." Shen Lian raised his eyebrows. "Just kidding, if the 8-headed monsters and the hemp ghost, whose behaviors are almost the same, went crazy, the consequences would be disastrous. Didn't the imperial court urgently deploy the Jinwu guards?" Hee. Zhu Yihong sneered repeatedly, his knuckles turning white from clenching his fists. "Although I don't know why the demons are gathering towards Yanliang town, the Jinwu guards of Daqi and Kangshan are also pushing them from behind. When demons are concentrated in towns that are not under their jurisdiction, they can naturally act with more unbridled methods without having to worry about excessive casualties among the people, which would lead to subsequent accountability from the court. Zhu Yihong and his colleagues not only need to deal with monsters, but also have to be wary of their colleagues. Why are the demons in the cave so troublesome? Shen Lian recalled the demons he had faced. Even though their intelligence is the same as that of ordinary people, with the slightest provocation of qi and blood, the demon will immediately fall into the obsession of devouring blood. As for the demons in Gao village, what can we say about them? They are particularly patient. He practiced openly in the pawnshop every day, but the demons didn't react at all. Zhu Yihong explained, "You have a misunderstanding. It is true that there are a lot of demons living in the cave, but it is not a blessed place for them. On the contrary, the demons that can survive in the caves are generally extremely cunning." Shen Lian frowned slightly. In a sense, the cave residents could actually be considered an independent demon force. Of course, because of the 81 difficulties, the demons could not enter and leave freely. Zhu Yihong seemed to be hesitant to speak. There was one thing she didn't say. In fact, Yanliang town was already considered the temporary cave residence designated by the imperial court. On the one hand, there are 3 demons lurking in Yanliang town for a long time. On the other hand, the underground river involving Bibotan is also a problem. Fortunately, the 3-headed demon has never harmed mortals, otherwise the court would have organized the people to move away long ago. Shen Lian, Ling Yu, the top performer of Kangshan Town's embroidery house, will come out tomorrow night at the Bibo building in Dongcheng district. You. All come. Shen Lian couldn't help licking his lips. If Ling Yu is a demon, I can kill her with one punch. Don't. Zhu Yihong suddenly felt something was wrong. At present, we only know that there is a demon hidden in the Bibo tower. Shen Lian, you must see clearly before you take action. She suddenly felt a little regretful. Logically speaking, Shen Lian's destructive power was far greater than that of the demon. I'm not some reckless man. Shen Lian waved his hand. As the exorcist of Yanliang town, his main method of slaying demons and monsters was to persuade people to do good. If they refused to obey, he would kill them with a single punch. There should be other Jinwu guards present tomorrow night. Even if they annoy you, don't kill them all at once. Zhu Yihong seemed to have foreseen this, and his expression was even worse than when he was talking about the monster. Rest assured. Zhu Yihong let out a long sigh and took out 5 martial arts secrets books from his arms. I exchanged for the top-notch martial arts manuals through the Jinwu guards. They include 2 volumes of pile techniques, 2 volumes of sword techniques, and 1 volume of palm techniques. Thank you, Master Zhu. Shen Lian felt like someone was sending him a pillow whenever he dozed off. If he integrated his stance into the 3 doors, the transformation would be a foregone conclusion. It was a pity that he did not have the horizontal training martial arts. Zhu Yihong felt relieved, as she was worried that Shen Lian had no desires or demands. She stood up and walked towards the gate, then turned around and reminded, the Jinwu guards don't know about you. Zhang Kui's situation, so be careful in Bibo Tower tomorrow night. Shen Lian nodded and watched Zhu Yihong leave. He casually flipped open the martial arts secret book and focused on the 2 volumes on sword techniques. Qingfeng sword technique is somewhat similar to Jikao fist technique. The moves are continuous, and there are hidden killing moves when the sword is drawn. Horizontal sword style is a sword technique that better meets Shen Lian's expectations. It emphasizes the accumulation of force while holding the sword, and usually the first sword is the most lethal. Shen Lian slapped the secret book and summoned the profession panel. Do you want to spend 1 point to master the horizontal sword style? Even if one is gifted and has great comprehension, it would still take at least half a year of hard practice to master the swordsmanship from scratch. Therefore, the first sword technique must be learned with some effort. Once the foundation is laid, the subsequent sword techniques can be easily mastered like the Debei palm. Determine. Shen Lian held the bone blade horizontally with both hands, and the awkward movement was corrected little by little. The extensive experience gained from using swords was directly instilled into his mind, as if he had mastered the horizontal sword style for 6 or 7 years, and the moves were as easy as using one's own arm. Shen Lian looked stern and murderous. Clang! The bone blade was unsheathed, and the fallen leaves passing by were broken into 2 halves. Zhu Yihong was walking slowly in the alley. Because she didn't walk far, she could vaguely hear the sound of knives coming from the courtyard. Her pupils shrank slightly, and she immediately recognized it as the horizontal sword style. How long has it been? Shen Lian only got enough to read the secret book once, right? And he has already entered the threshold. What kind of talent is this? Do you want to consume 2 points to advance to martial arts, horizontal sword style, minor success? Determine. Shen Lian sheathed the sword skillfully, and this sword-holding motion was the result of 20 years of practice. The strength is infused into the blade. Clang. The leaves floating around Shen Lian broke into pieces the size of a fingernail. Zhu Yihong's face was filled with astonishment. Shen Lian's second sword move directly jumped to a higher level, wiping out the decades of practice of an ordinary person. How can I describe it as talent? He was born with the knives. Do you want to consume 5 points to advance to martial arts, horizontal sword style, great mastery? Determine. Clang. The knife light enveloped the courtyard, cutting off the weeds and roots on the ground, but the fruits and vegetables were not affected. Just a few caterpillars cut in half fell, their bodies still unaware of death. Zhu Yihong wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Some Jinwu guards believed that the alchemist was a natural-born god. Now she suddenly felt that the term, natural-born god, was the most appropriate to describe Shen Lian. It's as if it's a monster born from martial arts. Enough to destroy everyone's cognition. Shen Lian had no intention of adding more points. It would take 10 points to fully advance. After all, swordsmanship was his last resort. It would not be too late to invest more points when the need arose. He wrapped the bone blade with cloth again, placed the scabbard and the bone fruit together in the coffin, and buried it at a depth of half a meter under the banyan tree. A day passes in a flash. During this period, people all over the city were talking about Ling Yu's name. Rumor has it that Ling Yu is a peerless beauty whose fame spread far and wide, and that even brothels in the capital spent huge sums of money but were unable to invite her. I don't know what kind of charm this courtesan has, but just as evening fell, a large number of sons of wealthy businessmen in the city gathered at the entrance of Bibo Tower. Mixed among them were the figures of the Jinwu guards, and the yamen runners quietly surrounded the streets. As soon as Bibo building opened, hundreds of people swarmed in, wanting to catch a glimpse of the top performer in the embroidery tower, and were even willing to spend 20 or 30 taels of silver for tea. In the chilly wind outside the door, there were a few wisps of cotton floating around. Chapter 77 Listening to Music in a Brothel. I am a serious person. Shen Lian took advantage of the late night and came to the Bibo Tower. Although he was not wearing a hat, his appearance was slightly different after his skin and flesh had shrunk through horizontal training, and he looked like an ordinary scholar. Ah, Master Ba, I also want to go into the brothel to listen to music. Go away. Shen Lian hurriedly stopped the starling from talking nonsense. Fortunately, there was constant singing in the Bibo Tower and no one noticed the starling that was mimicking words outside the door. Master Ba, please wait outside. If there is any danger, come and help me. Drinking. Shen Lian seemed a little helpless. He gave the starling a few sips of the gourd until the bird was satisfied. He then took it back and gave it some serious instructions. The starling landed on the top of the eaves, flapping its wings and combing its feathers out of boredom. Shen Lian's strong power surged into his pupils, and he found that the guests entering and leaving the Bibo Tower were already tainted with resentment, which meant that they had just encountered ghosts not long ago. On the open platform on the second floor, several ordinary courtesans were playing the piano and singing. Their situation is similar to that of the guests, except that they are severely eroded by resentment. Although they appear normal on the surface, they have actually become puppets. No wonder Zhu Yihong is afraid of me going on a killing spree. My goodness, Bibo Tower is full of resentment, but the true form of the ghost is nowhere to be found. Shen Lian put the bone blade into the fruit core and hummed a few lines of a tune. I will never forget the lonely forest of the fairy in the secluded world. I sigh for the world, I now believe that there is something imperfect in perfection. Even if we are in harmony, it is still hard to accept. When a madam saw Shen Lian approaching, she immediately reached out to stop him. Sir, you know the rules of Bibo Tower. Tea money is always required. Shen Lian's heart rate dropped sharply, and his qi and blood became intermittent. The madam passed by Shen Lian in front of her, and the latter walked into Bibo Tower with a dignified manner. The beauties in front of the door seemed to be oblivious to the surroundings. After becoming a puppet created by ghosts, they are essentially already corpses. With a little restraint of qi and blood, they will become dead objects. Shen Lian glanced around. There were tables filled with delicious food and fine wine in the Baibo Tower, and it was now filled with guests, who were being intimate with the courtesan puppet that looked no different from a dead person. What a strong taste, each of them is like Xu Xian or Ning Kaichen. Shen Lian took a quick look and found a few Jinwu guards mixed in the crowd. They all chose to watch coldly when faced with the scene of the unresolved love between a human and a ghost. He randomly chose a small single table near the window. First find the true form of the ghost and kill it. Don't give the demon a chance to escape, and don't make too much noise to affect my search for the body. Shen Lian maintained the strength of his pupils, and as a result, looking at the entire Bibo Tower, only a crazy old woman was not dead. The old woman was in charge of cleaning up leftovers in the lobby. She did dirty and tiring work every day, and as she was old and frail, she was not taken seriously by ghosts. There is a demon in the Bibo Tower, why don't you leave? The old woman kept muttering in a mysterious way, trying to inform the guests who came and went, but they were all bewitched by the ghost. They just thought the old woman was a crazy woman and waved her away in disgust. Demons, all of you are demons, you must die in Bibo Tower. As the old woman walked, resentment began to penetrate into her bones. Her speech became unclear, and it would not be long before she became a puppet of the ghost. Old woman, tell me more about the demons. The old woman paused and belatedly saw Shen Lian, but even though she opened her mouth, no sound came out of her throat. Shen Lian patted the old woman's shoulder, and all the resentment in her body dissipated. The two of them were in a corner and did not attract attention. The Jinwu guards were mainly concerned about the courtesans. They could feel that the noise outside the door was gradually disappearing, indicating that the bailiffs had dispersed the passers-by. The old woman panted violently and couldn't help but say, "Sir, Bibo Tower has become a devil's den. Let's go now while there's still time. If you're any later, you'll die here." She couldn't help but recall her experiences of the past few days and muttered to herself. Miss Yin was putting on makeup in front of a bronze mirror. I saw with my own eyes that she took off her human skin, revealing her bloody body. Hoo. The old woman was trembling all over and was helped by Shen Lian to sit down. Xiaofeng was such a good person, but only one night had passed and I never saw her again. She must have died in Bibo Tower. And the kitchen guys all hanged themselves in the middle of the night. Cough. Go quickly. There is no one alive in Bibo Tower. Seeing that Shen Lian was indifferent, the old woman thought that the latter's mind had been corroded by resentment. She closed her eyes and murmured, "Master Zhang Kui bless me, the demon will not die a good death, Master Zhang Kui bless me. Old lady, please have some tea and rest for a while." Shen Lian observed the lobby. The 5 Jinwu guards of Yanliang town were scattered everywhere, ready to take action against the demons at any time, while the attitudes of the remaining Jinwu guards were ambiguous. There were 3 Jinwu guards waiting at the door. They seemed ready to cooperate with Wang Xin and others at any time, but in fact they had already thought about escaping. Anyway, the casualties among mortals in Bibo Tower had nothing to do with them. Some other Jinwu guards and Yamen runners were on guard outside. They didn't want to take any risk, but were unwilling to give up the credit. More than a dozen Jinwu guards, and 200 careful people, right? Shen Lian noticed that in the private room on the 2nd floor with a wide view, there were 2 Jinwu guards, a man and a woman, whose cultivation had reached the perfection of the 5 innate realms. However, they seemed much more at ease, listening to the music and chatting with great interest. They didn't even try to hide their internal strength and didn't care about the danger at all. The two have obvious differences. Although their hair was waist-length, one could still see that they had a second face behind their heads, a strange fox face hidden in the long hair. The internal strength is probably related to the jade-faced fox. In the Moyan Cave on Jile Mountain in Journey to the West, there is a group of fox spirits that have cultivated into demons. The jade-faced fox was originally the concubine of Bull Demon King. Later, the 4 masters and apprentices came to borrow the palm leaf fan, but were killed by Zhu Baji. No, Master Zhang Kui is here. The old woman was so nervous that she was sweating profusely and almost fell to the ground. The style of music in Bibo Tower changed slightly. An old procuress shouted loudly, "My dear friends and neighbors, on this beautiful day, Ling Yu, the leader of the brothel, is honored to perform a dance and sing a song on the stage. Thank you for coming to support us." A faint fragrance filled the air, causing an uproar in the lobby. Everyone stared at the platform at the same time, and the curtain slowly covered it. Go, Go, go. The old woman's pupils dilated, as if she was about to face an unspeakable monster. A graceful woman was dancing lightly. Her movements were a little awkward and stiff, but the audience was staring at her intently. The old woman seemed to have lost all her strength, and there was a hint of despair in her eyes. She knew that tonight was a night of death. Shen Lian raised his eyebrows. In his eyes, the so-called Lingyu is still just a ghost puppet. The so-called courtesan's appearance on stage now seems to have some flavor of shadow play, and the Bibo Tower seems to be a trap set up to attract the Jinwu guards. A scholar stood up and said eagerly, "Who is the 100-Flower Queen? Who is Lingyu? I wonder if I can see Miss Lingyu's true appearance. It would be worth dying for." The madam pointed to the second floor and said, "Young master, please come in." The scholar hurriedly walked up the stairs, but after only a few steps, his energy was drained at a speed visible to the naked eye, and his skin and flesh became withered. Snapped. The falling of corpses did not affect the frenzied atmosphere in the lobby. Damn it. Wang Xin's face was grim, and the tabletop sizzled where his palms touched. He turned to ask Li Shun, "Haven't you found the true form of the demon yet?" "No." 6 pupils grew on Li Shun's forehead, which was the ultimate level of his current multi-eye realm. However, although the Bibo Tower was filled with resentment, there was no trace of its source, and even the scholar's death was inexplicable. Something's wrong, something very wrong. Wang Xin had a gloomy expression on his face, and signaled the yamen runners stationed in the brothel to move closer to him. Bibo Tower looks extraordinary from beginning to end. First, the demon behind the scenes revealed his true colors 2 or 3 days in advance, and after attracting the attention of the Jinwu guards, he continued to act as the so-called courtesan. Wang Xin and others did not conceal their layout in the Bibo Tower at all, intending to deliberately alert the enemy and force out the hidden demon's true form. The demon seemed to be challenging the Jinwu guards, in stark contrast to the cunning it had displayed before. Something's wrong. The 8 demons from Gao village should be preparing for the temple fair. Why does Bibo Tower feel like something out of the plan? Wang Xin narrowed his eyes. If there is a human factor, I will eat him alive even if I lose my head afterwards. Li Shun asked cautiously, "Boss Wang, what should we do next?" "Wait for half an hour at most. Regardless of whether the demon's true form appears or not, clear the area immediately when the time is up. Do not allow more casualties to occur." Wang Xin saw that Zhu Yihong was a little uneasy. "Zhu Yihong, what's wrong with you?" Zhu Yihong glanced at the corner obscurely. Shen Lian was drinking wine with a plate of peanuts he had brought with him, and occasionally chatting with the old woman. "It's okay. Half an hour is not too long." Wang Xin shook his head and said, "Not long. The demon is more patient than we thought." Zhu Yihong thought to herself, "The demon is indeed patient, but I'm afraid Shen Lian will lose his patience and start a massacre in Bibo Tower." She took a deep breath and gripped the sword at her waist tightly, ready for battle. When the situation in Bibo building was fermenting, 2 Jinwu guards with fox faces suddenly stood up and left. They walked straight out of the lobby and smiled at Lingyu on the podium with their fox faces. Click click click. Lingyu froze in place. The curtain was stained with blood, and an extremely terrifying demonic aura burst out. Cotton wool appeared on Lingyu's facial features, and the originally long and winding female voice suddenly changed and turned into the hoarse tone of an old man. "Ms. Gao, wearing a phoenix crown and a bridal gown, is a riot of color. Miss Gao, if you get married again next year, I, a seamstress, will weave new clothes for you, still with the same phoenix crown and bridal robe, still in all its splendor." The spectator was in a daze and kept calling out Miss Gao's name. Shen Lian smiled coldly. Lingyu, who was just a puppet, suddenly began to transform into her true form as a demon. Her flesh, blood and bones became deformed, and a huge amount of cotton wool flew around. These 2 half-human, half-demon vixens really think they are so clever. They use demons to test us. Haha, they are so bold. Shen Lian did not pursue the Jinwu guards, his target was still the demons. But he didn't mind freeing his hands to kill the 2 jade-faced foxes. Chapter 78, Offending Shen Lian and Daring to Run Away. The resentment in the Bibo building became increasingly intense, with cotton wool seeping out of the walls on all 4 sides, and the talismans that had been posted in advance were already spontaneously combusting without fire. Inside the stomach of a creature named Lingyu, there is a ball of cotton wool that is madly growing flesh and blood. The ghost is about to break out of the body. What surprised Wang Xin and others was that the ghost's cultivation was far from 500 years. To be precise, it did not seem to be a complete cotton wool ghost. The cotton wool ghost can be dispersed into countless cotton wools. Maybe there are only some ghosts in Ling Yu's body. The Jinwu guards all looked unhappy. No one wanted to waste resources on the ghost's fake body. Besides, it would be useless even if they killed it. But the cotton wool ghost has already appeared. If it is allowed to devour blood and food, it will reach the level of 1,000 years. The consequences could be disastrous. A large number of Yamen runners rushed into the Bibo Tower without fear of life and death. Roar! A huge amount of cotton wool was flying everywhere. One could vaguely see a big-bellied, twisted ghost squatting on the platform. The ghost has some characteristics of a guinea pig, its skin is covered with traces of stitches, and its flesh and blood are replaced by cotton wool, like a deformed rag doll. After a brief silence, screams continued in the lobby. The onlookers finally came to their senses when the incident happened, and then they found that the delicious food on the table had rotted away, and the woman in her arms had turned into a slightly edematous corpse. Help, sir, help. They tried desperately to escape from Bibo Tower, but their hands and feet got stuck in the cotton wool. Wang Xin immediately gave the order, let's trap the ghost on the high platform first, and then find a way to deal with it after the people evacuate. Li Shun's golden light swept across, and the cotton wool within 4 or 5 meters turned into ashes. The talismans were taken out for free and posted around the platform. Wang Xin then began to engrave talismans to seal away ghosts on the surface of the curtains. Damn, it's definitely man-made. Wang Xin's face was gloomy. Ling Yu, used to carry the ghost, was just a temporary container. The high platform is very suitable for placing talismans, inducing them to spend a lot of resources. If there are casualties when encircling and suppressing ghosts, it is likely to affect the next temple fair where ghosts will be entrenched. The Kangshan Jinwu guards, the fox who practices the Jade Face Sutra, is indeed not simple. Wang Xin suppressed all distracting thoughts and mobilized everyone to assist the talismans in suppressing the ghosts. He poured buckets of black dog blood from the back kitchen at the cotton wool ghost. While the cotton wool ghost was struggling, his eyes were fixed on a corner of the lobby. There is blood food, delicious blood food. Shen Lian was still sipping his wine leisurely. The woman beside him knelt on the ground, praying to Zhang Kui to protect her. The lobby was in chaos, the candlelight was flickering, and Shen Lian's shadow was getting longer and longer. The alley outside Bibo building. A man and a woman stood in the shadows, listening to the desperate cries coming from the other side of the wall. They lifted up their long hair, turned their hands and feet 180 degrees, laughed sharply from their weird fox faces, and there was murderous intent in the corners of their eyes. Junior sister Ling Yu, I'll leave Bibo Tower to you. The man took out a bell and said, I have left cotton wool in 3 puppets. The remaining 2 puppets can be transformed into ghosts at any time. Brother Chin's tactics are quite sinister, but I like them. Ling Yu covered her mouth and chuckled. The fox face showed a bit of charm, and the yellow teeth were sharp and narrow. Who let me be senior brother's woman? I pretended to be the courtesan in Bibo Tower for more than 10 days. I was really tortured. Brother Chin, why did you attract ghosts to kill each other for no reason? The value of the human heart pill you used is far beyond ordinary value. Just stay here for 1 night. Qin Hong explained, my master told me to divert the attention of the local government and make arrangements in Yanliang town in advance. Brother Qin, there must be some hidden opportunities in Yanliang town. After all, no new cave dwellings have been created in the past 100 years. Maybe. Ling Yu couldn't help but reveal greed. She could sense something strange. Yanliang town was a cave town, but tens of thousands of people lived in peace. Could it be that the 1,000-year-old demon was not interested in blood food? Junior sister Ling Yu, master will be here in a few days. If you make any small moves, you and I will be neither able to live nor die. Okay, senior brother Qin, go quickly, and don't forget the kindness of junior sister. Be careful of Zhang Kui. Qin Hong's bones collided and he turned into a fox-faced human who walked through the alleys. Ling Yu ignored Qin Hong's reminder, her eyes became colder. Why didn't master tell me that Qin Hong, you are fooling around? She squeezed the bell hard, and cracks began to spread on the surface of the instrument. Feeling that the Bibo Tower was beginning to lose control, Ling Yu nervously covered her mouth and chuckled, enjoying the pleasure brought by the death of a mortal. The cotton wool ghost became hysterical, and the concentration of resentment around it was so high that no one could get close to it. Because the cotton wool was released in advance, the 3 balls of cotton wool merged with each other, forming a ghost that was equivalent to 2/3 of the real body. At least 500 years of practice. Ling Yu threw the useless magic bell away and walked away from Bibo Tower. Kindness. She frowned and saw some cotton wool floating in the air, madly converging towards the Bibo Tower, and the ghost's power increased rapidly. That's impossible. How can the true form of the cotton wool ghost appear with only 100 people's blood? Dong dong dong. There was a dull sound like beating a drum. Ling Yu was about 20 or 30 meters away from the Bibo Tower, but she felt something strange at the first moment. There was an extremely terrifying aura in the house. Innate warrior. No, 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 even an innate warrior can't reach this level. Boom. The gate of Bibo Tower was broken. Led by the old woman, all the people were calling on Zhang Kui for protection. The Jinwu guards retreated in an orderly manner and blocked off the nearby city area together with the Yamen runners. Who is dealing with the ghost? It has been a being with Taoism for 700 or 800 years. Ling Yu turned around and saw a figure over 3 meters tall standing at the entrance. His flesh and blood seemed to be made of metal, with black scales covering his skin. He looked no different from a demon. A faint flame surrounded his body, which felt somewhat like a strong force. Ling Yu noticed. Shen Lian's limbs were wrapped with cotton wool, causing his own blood and energy to be constantly devoured by the ghost, but it was also with the help of possession that the true body of the cotton wool ghost was attracted to descend. Hey, I finally got you here. Shen Lian walked slowly to the open space in front of the Bibo Tower, grabbed the cotton wool and used his wisdom eye. Cotton wool identification completed, 9 Qi Yan experience plus 0.21%. Ah, the cotton wool ghost scream was extremely piercing. He didn't expect that the blood food near his mouth would break his teeth. At least 40 or 50 years of his cultivation was lost. Shen Lian exerted force with his right arm and forcibly pulled the possessed ghost out of his flesh and blood. The cotton-like ghosts tried to solidify into a hole. Boom! A fist as big as a sandbag fell down. The sea of fire burned the cotton wool, and a strong resentment poured into Shen Lian's mouth and nose. His expression was ferocious, and his fists took turns smashing at the cotton wool ghost frantically. Don't you like being possessed? Come on, I'll let you possess me as much as you want. Shen Lian thrust his arm into the cotton wool ghost's mouth. The latter closed its teeth weakly and only managed to break a few scales. Then, the cotton wool ghost was hit by a violent blow from his left fist. Bang bang bang, let me find out where the invitation is hidden. Shen Lian searched the cotton ghost's internal organs for a while, and if the latter showed any intention of resistance, he would immediately use his wisdom eyes to serve. The cotton wool ghost had no choice but to constantly get rid of its resentment by breaking off the gecko's tail, otherwise it would be directly wiped out by the wise eye. Hundreds of years of cultivation would not be enough. Wang Xin and others smiled bitterly. The demons that they had to fight desperately to deal with were completely powerless in front of Zhang Kui. He was truly a natural-born alchemist. Only Zhu Yihong observed Shen Lian meticulously. She discovered that Shen Lian's terrifying demonization was not a magical power, but seemed to be composed of a series of horizontal training techniques, which was a symbol of the ultimate martial arts. Perhaps Shen Lian is indeed not an alchemist, but a warrior with unprecedented talent. Ling Yu's chest heaved violently. Zhang Kui, what kind of monster is this? She quickly retreated from the alley, trying to get away from Dongcheng district in a panic. At the same time, she took out the talisman to contact Qin Hong, intending to ask the latter to cover her. Whoosh! Ling Yu felt a sharp pain and a bony spine pierced through her heart. She looked back. The inhuman scaly demon was still kneading the cotton wool ghost, and the skeletal spine extending from its back was horrifying. Boom! The skeletal spine carried Ling Yu's body underground. After Shen Lian realized the wonderful use of the banyan tree, there was no need to transport corpses within Yanliang town. They could be directly buried in the soil and turned into nutrients. There really is an invitation. As soon as Shen Lian found the invitation inside the cotton wool ghost, he removed the resentment and put it into the fruit core, and the resentment that constituted the cotton wool ghost suddenly collapsed. The ghosts born in the tailor shop on Yongqi Street all seemed to have the same origin, as if they came from a great demon with extremely high spiritual power. I'm afraid it was the tailor who made Miss Gao's wedding dress 1,000 years ago. After thousands of years of changes, a mortal is transformed into a demon with profound Taoism. What about those who originally had 81 tribulations? Shen Lian swallowed his saliva. The ghost that escaped from the tailor shop would most likely not even be considered a minion if it were put in Gao village. After he dealt with the cotton thread ghost, he disappeared into the night. Qin Hong walked quietly in the South City district, his clothes stained with fresh blood. He then took out the superior spiritual talisman, demon detecting talisman. Even in Gao village, the demon detecting talisman can detect the aura of demons. Qin Hong came here to find out the truth about Yanliang town. When the internal force activated the talisman, the self-igniting demon-detecting talisman emitted thick smoke and dust. The smoke and dust surged in all directions and finally settled in the eyes. What the hell? A 1,000-year-old demon alone shouldn't cause much trouble. Could it be that Yanliang town has another hidden story? Qin Hong didn't expect the demon-detecting talisman to react so violently. How could Yanliang town, as a newly born cave dwelling, be filled with the aura of demons? He looked at the town carefully, his clothes soaked with cold sweat. As far as the eye can see, the ground is covered with dense roots, which means that the entire Yanliang town is built on the body of a big demon. Moreover, bloody mouths opened in countless shadows. Yanliang town is a demon cave. Big demons are everywhere. We must evacuate as soon as possible. Qin Hong hurriedly gathered his internal strength and ran towards the city gate in panic. He heard the rapid calls of crows above his head, and then his body was out of control. Hiss. Quote. He witnessed himself taking out the talisman and transmitting it to his master, Hushan, who was far away in Gaojia town. The content is unknown, but it is obvious that the big demon in Yanliang town is deliberately luring Hushan to come, as if he is preparing to catch him in one fell swoop and leave no future troubles. My master is from Moyan Cave. Ah, the whole family is together. Chapter 79 The Truth of the Journey to the West World. The turmoil in Bibo Tower was gone in a flash. The cotton wool ghost died and 2 of the 10 household Jinwu guards went missing. The temple fair in Yanliang town was not affected at all, but became even more lively, with fiery red decorations seen everywhere in the 4 urban areas. Perhaps the only change is the new Zhongkui temple being built in Dongcheng district. It's hard to hold back. I was the one who slew all the demons and monsters. Brother Zhongkui is very popular. Shen Lian had just returned to the pawnshop from Dongcheng district. The scale of the Zhongkui temple was quite large, and the area it covered was enough to build 4 or 5 temples. There was a slight solemnity in his eyes. Shen Lian had been exposing his qi and blood in different places in Yanliang town for several days, but it did not cause any waves, as if all the ghosts had disappeared. This is fucking weird. Could the temple attract a 1,000-year-old demon? Shen Lian couldn't help feeling a sense of urgency, so he kept his strength flowing all the time. Martial arts. Unknown stance, Hunyuan, immortal bronze body dharma, sea tide fist, tide blood nourishing internal stance, perfect, horizontal sword style, great accomplishment, green pine stance, first glimpse, water covering stance, first glimpse. The blood nourishing internal stance has been successfully completed, and Shen Lian has also mastered the stance method given to him by Zhu Yihong, but it still requires a lot of effort to perfect it. The green pine posture is mainly aimed at maintaining longevity, the covering water posture is more focused on pure strength. Both stances have the same characteristics. The generated strength can calm an agitated mind. It can be seen that Zhu Yihong is really afraid that Shen Lian will go astray. Shen Lian was naturally happy to see this. The integration of martial arts was a process of embracing all things, and the integrated martial arts should preferably involve all aspects. Wait a little longer for the synthesis of the stance method. The 3-door stance method will definitely promote the transformation of strength. You can use this opportunity to complete the practice of the root of tongue stage. If you can achieve perfection in the 5 innate realms sooner, you can also try to comprehend the 6th consciousness. Shen Lian swept across the branches of the banyan tree. The second 6 consciousness fruit has already sprouted, but he estimates that at least 5 6 consciousness fruits are needed to ensure a 100% understanding of the 6th consciousness. The other Dan fruits are already ripe, but the starling has been elusive recently and seems to have stolen 2 or 3 fish fruits. What a waste. Fortunately, the rare Dan fruit was not persecuted by the starlings. Shen Lian reached out and picked up 2 strange-looking fruits. Ghost cotton fruit. It is produced from the banyan tree and has the effect of nourishing the lungs and soul after consumption. The stinky lung spirit controls breathing and can greatly increase lung capacity. Shen Lian threw the ghost cotton fruit into the gourd, and the other fruit was the alien stomach fruit. However, the fruit bred by the fox spirit seemed to be particularly large, as if it was made up of 2 fruits. Isogastric fruit. Born from the banyan tree, the flesh is useless to eat, and the core is used as storage space. Shen Lian peeled off the flesh, revealing a dark-colored core. After his strength poured into it, he discovered that the storage space inside was as large as 10 cubic meters. Not bad, it's finally enough. It's very convenient to transport a corpse occasionally on weekdays. Shen Lian was tidying up the storage space, and found it was filled with all sorts of items, including more than a dozen pieces of women's underwear. He turned out a fox tail, and a hint appeared on the career panel. The fox immortal occupation has been triggered, but the necessary conditions are missing and the job cannot be taken. Only a half immortal. If it was a fox fairy, I might consider it. Forget it. The style of fox spirits really doesn't suit me. I'm afraid that they will awaken some weird magical powers, which will make martial arts no longer pure. The rest of the storage space is filled with empty jade bottles, and the medicines inside have long since turned into nutrients. It's a pity that there are no martial arts secret manuals. But think about it, after all, only a few of the Jinwu guards are willing to practice martial arts, and most of them specialize in secret techniques. Shen Lian emptied the fruit core bit by bit, and suddenly noticed a brocade box with a talisman attached to it. He carefully opened the brocade box, and inside was a bloody scalp, as if it had just been peeled off a living person's head. A strong demonic aura permeated from it. This thing. Scalp identification of Moyan Cave was successful. Moyan Cave scalp. Born by the Wansui fox demon, you can take the scalp to the Moyan Cave in Jilei Mountain to participate in the head scalping meeting. Remember, the Fox King will not eat hanged ghosts. Shen Lian's pupils shrank slightly as he realized that the scalp from Moyan Cave and the invitation from Gao Laozhuang were of the same nature and their uses were definitely not simple. That Jinwu guard is the demon inner strength inherited by the jade-faced fox, and he deliberately preserved the means to the Moyan Cave. Could it be that? An idea popped up in Shen Lian's mind, and it seemed that he was about to reveal a corner of the world of Journey to the West. He couldn't help but look at the coffin buried in the corner of the courtyard wall. Perhaps the scabbard that was refined into a bone magic weapon could answer his questions. Shen Lian even found it difficult to maintain his practice of the standing meditation. Waited for 3 days. According to the records of the corpse fruit, the lower-level magical instrument achieved through the scabbard is related to the white bone demon. Shen Lian opened the coffin and a foul stench hit him in the face. The scabbard he saw was made of bones, but at first glance it looked like it was made of white jade. Corpse demon scabbard appraisal successfully. Corpse demon scabbard. Made from the index finger of Mrs. Whitebone's left hand, the sharp weapon in the scabbard can be nourished by resentment, and corpse poison will be generated on the blade. I see. Shen Lian slapped the tree trunk, and felt a chill down his spine as he suddenly realized what had happened. The source of the internal strength is the peerless demon. As the Jinwu guards practice, their physical constitutions will inevitably gradually approach those of the peerless demon. The end of internal training is likely to be a possession by an unparalleled demon, or the Jinwu guards will take over as the host. Shen Lian felt horrified. Fortunately he did not choose to try internal energy at the beginning. The demons of the past generations cannot escape from the cave, and may even be trapped to death inside. It is unknown who created the demon's internal strength. As for the invitation, the role of the scalp. It is equivalent to a ticket to the depths of the cave. If the internal strength comes from the same origin, maybe this opportunity can be used to transform oneself. Shen Lian hesitated for a few moments and sealed his scalp in the brocade box again. He played with the brocade box, thinking that in the future he might be able to see the professions involved in alchemy, which would definitely be rarer than those triggered by the demon's internal energy. Shen Lian stood up and sheathed the bone blade. The bone blade did not resist the nourishment of resentment, and a dark green pattern slowly appeared on the edge of the blade. Unfortunately, the corpse poison is only effective against living people, but it is not very effective against demons. I guess that the alchemist is an inner practitioner who got the opportunity of the cave. Whether he is a human or a ghost, we can only ask them themselves. The Jinwu guards seem to be running around the caves to suppress demons, but in fact they are pursuing interests. I am afraid that most of the lower-level households are not aware of this. The collapse of the journey to the West World, Jin Chanzi is a very crucial point, otherwise the 9,981 tribulations would not have trapped him to death on the spot. Also, the secret of everyone's Tang monk's flesh is also closely related to Jin Chanzi. Shen Lian pinched the bridge of his nose in pain. He was just a frog in a well. Even if he was close to the truth, he might only see a small part of the truth. Alchemists should be able to enter and exit the cave with restrictions. What are they then? Is he a direct disciple of the cave mansion? Chapter 80 The thousand-year-old female ghost on a blind date in Yanliang town. Of course, the caves should not be filled with 9981 difficult peerless monsters. There are always hills occupied by ordinary thousand-year-old monsters, which should also be considered caves in the eyes of the court. Shen Lian sighed, feeling that Yanliang town's geographical location was really unfortunate. It is very close to Gao Laozhuang, and the underground river is also connected to Bibotan. The two caves can produce monsters in large quantities. Perhaps the only good thing is that the experience of the corpse-hunting Taoist priest is already 30%. After the Taylor case is over, there may be a chance for promotion. Shen Lian suppressed his distracting thoughts. Since there is no trace of the demon, just focus on practicing the stance method. The temple fair was slower than expected. There was almost no movement for the next 5 days, except that a lot of decorations were added to the city. The Jinwu guards tried various methods to attract ghosts, but to no avail. It seemed as if they were wasting their energy on something that did not exist, and no useful news came from Gao village. Shen Lian responded to all changes with the same attitude and stayed in the pawnshop without going out. He embraced the bone blade, seemingly doing nothing, but in fact, the power was constantly flowing through the corpse demon scabbard, and he could feel the power integrating into the magic weapon. The corpse demon scabbard is different from the fruit core. It has the potential to be promoted to a mid to high quality magical weapon, but it requires a long period of nurturing. Shen Lian discovered that the warming and nourishing instrument did not affect the stance and could also help increase strength. Ever since the old man recovered, he had been lacking a channel to expend his energy. The corpse demon scabbard filled the gap and even gave him an extra half-day to practice his fighting skills. Shen Lian's idea of adding a horizontal sword move is indeed feasible. After mastering a sword technique, mastering the Qingfeng sword technique becomes a natural thing. Not to mention the palm techniques. The palm technique given by Zhu Yihong, Falling Spring Palm, did not take long to achieve minor success because its true meaning matched the Jikao fist. Shen Lian's smooth practice did not reduce his sense of urgency. There is an undercurrent in Yanliang town. Everyone is talking about the temple fair, but the so-called temple fair is nowhere to be seen. Even though it was late at night, Shen Lian did not rest. Instead, he practiced meditation, using the stance method to reach a minor level of success. Hoa hoa hoa. The sound of breathing mixed with the sound of wind. Unknowingly, Shen Lian fell into a trance, his consciousness immersed in a state of half-sleep and half-wakefulness. The waning moon overhead was obscured by clouds, and the lights in Yanliang town had already dimmed at midnight. Only the Yamen runners were still patrolling the streets. In Yulao Temple, couples make wishes together and have a happy marriage. The couple's ceremony is to hold hands with red silk and flowers, and bow 4 times in the bridal chamber. The bailiff heard inexplicable singing, as if a wedding was taking place, but it was already late at night. Something is wrong. We must inform Lord Jinwei as soon as possible. Thump. The Yamen runner's legs went limp and he fell to the ground. His head hit the wall, leaving a cut on his forehead, and blood immediately oozed out. Not only did he not react at all, but he also started snoring. Just a moment. The bailiff closed his eyes, quietly got up, and walked slowly towards the South City gate. His consciousness was still in deep sleep, as if he was sleepwalking. People came out of the residential area one after another, all of them walking while soundly sleeping. At least 200 or 300 people. A dozen Jinwu guards followed the crowd. They all came from Dakikang Mountain and used various means to secretly explore whether there was any opportunity to exploit. To them, the death and injury of mortals do not matter. The most important thing is whether we can gain benefits from the Taylor case. Breaking through the 6th level of Yuandan requires resources, and being promoted to 100 households requires merit. If you don't fight for it, sooner or later you will die in a cave. It can only be said that if it weren't for the extremely terrifying Zhang Kui intimidating the Jinwu guards, their actions would inevitably be even more unscrupulous. Zhang Kui is like a sharp sword hanging above the heads of the Jinwu guards. As a result, in recent days, their small actions have been limited to blood sacrifices of a few livestock, and even the purchase and sale of livestock cost far more than the market value of silver. Damn it, something is going to happen. Wang Xin's face was solemn as he witnessed the strange things happening in the city from the roof of the yamen. Li Shun shook his head and said, "At present, we can't see the commonality of the people who are possessed by evil spirits. It seems that a resentment has invaded the Niwen Palace out of nowhere. Is your life safe? It's okay. The resentment is just controlling their behavior. I have asked Wu Anyan to try to remove the resentment and see if he can wake them up." While the two were talking, the crowd had already arrived at the open space outside the city gate. Hundreds of people actually cooperated tacitly to cut down trees, and another group of people sleepwalked and delivered carpentry and masonry tools. The mansion was built bit by bit from scratch. Resentment gathered towards the mansion, and the newly painted brick walls were stained with mold. Once the mansion is completed, I am afraid a powerful demon will show up. Wang Xin took a breath of cold air. Demons that are 700 or 800 years old are very troublesome. If a 1,000-year-old demon comes, I don't know how many people will die in the entire Yanliang town. I have contacted the court and heard that it was Captain Hu who took the initiative to come to Yanliang town. Hu Zanfu, didn't he almost become an alchemist back then? I heard that he can perform some of the alchemist's methods. The court asked him to stay in Gaojia town to refine talismans. Why would he take the risk himself? What do you think? 2 of his disciples died in Yanliang town not long ago. There was one more thing Wang Xin hadn't said in his heart. It was not a pity that Qin Hong and the other man died. After all, he almost killed them in the Bibo Tower. Li Shun looked around. By the way, where is Zhu Yihong? I asked her to go to Xicheng district. Zhu Yihong hurried to the pawnshop. The courtyard was panting like a drum. Although everyone thought Shen Lian was an alchemist, she always felt that Shen Lian was more like a warrior. Zhu Yihong's forehead was covered with cold sweat. Shen Lian, don't let the resentment affect your mind. In a sense, the possessed Shen Lian was far beyond the reach of ordinary demons, so the methods she used to teach him were all aimed at calming his mind. Zhu Yihong opened the door and saw Shen Lian under the banyan tree at a glance. Shen Lian closed his eyes and crossed his legs, as if he was exposing his tangible strength, but within only half a meter around his body, the air couldn't help but become distorted. Shen Lian. Zhu Yihong approached the banyan tree, feeling an invisible oppression enveloping herself. She noticed that although Shen Lian was not sleepwalking, his strength was circulating unconsciously and his flesh and blood showed signs of losing control at any time. Shen Lian suddenly opened his eyes. Zhu Yihong felt as if she had fallen into an icy cave. The courtyard seemed to be filled with corpses and blood. Laughter came from the shadows in the corners of the walls. The banyan tree was twisted and hideous. Master Zhu, is there any disaster happening in Yanliang town? Zhu Yihong came back to his senses and said with a pale face, "Hundreds of people are possessed by evil spirits and are now gathering outside the city to build a mansion." Shen Lian frowned slightly and used his wisdom eye to look at himself. Appraisal completed. 9 Qi earthly aversion is plus 0.02. There is really resentment in my body. Shen Lian had a lot of thoughts in his mind. He vaguely remembered that he had a dream while he was half asleep and half awake. It was a strange and inexplicable wedding banquet. The guests were toasting each other while the body of a woman in a wedding dress was hanging from the beam. However, the specific details have long been unclear, and Shen Lian does not know whether the female corpse is Miss Gao who married Zhu Baji. The ghost in the tailor shop can attract the 1,000-year-old demon through some means, and the corpse of the wedding dress woman will sooner or later descend upon the mansion outside the city. Zhu Yihong hesitated and said, "Be careful. The tailor case will be taken over by Hu Zanfu, the captain of the army. He specializes in the Jade Face Sutra." Shen Lian thought of the human skin in the fruit core and couldn't help asking, "Is Hu Zanfu a Taoist priest?" Not entirely, but it is said that he inherited some of the teachings from the alchemists in his early years. Understood. Shen Lian narrowed his eyes. It was obvious that Hu Zanfu came for him. Not a Taoist priest. Then kill him. Master Zhu, I want to buy a few books on horizontal training martial arts from you, even if they are of medium or low level. I'll keep an eye out for you. Zhu Yihong said softly, "The ghost market holds an auction in mid-June every year. There are many secret books, but they are very dangerous." Auctions. Well, on the 3rd floor of the ghost market, there is an auction only for demons and monsters. Once we live, we become auction items, but the Jinwu guards often make a lot of money from this. Can you tell me more specifically? I'm not sure. How can a person in the 5th level of Shantian be qualified to go to the 3rd level of the ghost market? The sun was rising in the sky, and the mansion was taking shape. The people who were possessed by evil spirits have returned to Yanliang town one after another, and their resentment has gradually dissipated. They have no memory of being busy working last night. Zhu Yihong said goodbye and left. Shen Lian watched Zhu Yihong leave, then without hesitation called out the career panel and invested points into 2 basic stance techniques that he had just glimpsed. The power is too weak. It doesn't look like the demon's internal power that can provide significant protection. I almost got possessed by a ghost in my sleep. Do you want to consume 2 points to upgrade your martial arts? Qingsong Zhuang, minor success. Do you want to consume 2 points to advance to martial arts? Water covering pillar, minor success. Determine. The 2 forces surged and circulated throughout the body along the meridians, causing the qi and blood to be lost rapidly. The 2 fish fruits were barely enough to consume it. Do you want to consume 5 points to upgrade your martial arts? Qingsong Zhuang, great mastery. Do you want to consume 5 points to advance to martial arts? Water covering pillar, great mastery. Determine. The strength of the body is like a sea of power and returns to the Dantian. The 14 points of investment have an immediate effect, and even the 2nd meridian at the root of the tongue is opened up. Shen Lian did not advance directly to perfection, but wanted to see if he could break through on his own. Points, 41. Fortunately, we have a lot of points, otherwise we would be back to the days before liberation. Shen Lian seized the time to continue his practice, hoping to transform his stance as quickly as possible before the so-called temple fair broke out. The improvement brought by further practicing the stance method is not necessarily less than that brought by practicing horizontally. The pile method is associated with specificity. Shen Lian's current special ability is just scales covering his entire body. As his horizontal training becomes more and more intense, the defense of the scales is gradually becoming useless. Special transformations are also about stacking armor. The prerequisite for dealing with 1,000-year-old monsters is that the armor is thick enough. Shen Lian did not dare to slack off and maintained his practice of the stance all the time. The mansion outside the city was becoming more and more complete. Hundreds or even thousands of people went to build it every night. When they woke up, they inevitably felt sore in their backs and waists. In addition, there is residual resentment in the Niwen Palace. Although it will not affect the soul, it may cause chronic diseases when the qi and blood are weak. The pawnshop is naturally peaceful. Shen Lian noticed that Bai Haibo and the others had resentment in their bodies, so he immediately used his wisdom eye to eliminate it. The mansion took 3 days to build. In front of the door was a plaque engraved with Gao Mansion, accompanied by fiery red decorations similar to those of a wedding banquet. It looked extremely abrupt outside the empty city. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories. And never miss out on a great listen.